we can open first, and then Ian, if you want to open FinCom. It is 6:02 p.m., October 27th, here for the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and FinCom. Declare this Board of Selectmen meeting open.
And FinCom will open also at 6:03 on October 27th.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairs, I guess, for this evening. I'm going to talk through the mask. If it's a problem, I'll lower the mask for the purpose of my comments. First, I want to start off with particularly thanking FinCom. I know this is it's been a late.
First, Ron, can you introduce yourself for the folks in the room that haven't met you yet?
Okay. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Ron Sanangelo. I'm the new town administrator. It's okay, Mr. Chairman. I just want to give a little bit of background so you know who I am, right? So to let you know, I come from recently the town of Southbridge. I had 5 years as the town manager in the town of Southbridge. Prior to that, I served in Hanson, Massachusetts, which is exactly the same kind of form of government, open town meeting as we had here. I did that for 2 years. Prior to that, I was in the private sector as a project manager developing IT infrastructure for Cigna Insurance and John Hancock for a company called CGI. Prior to that, I worked for the state of Connecticut for 4 years as the information technology, the person who coordinated between all the major mid-sized and small state agencies building IT, okay, an IT project. Before that, I served 10 years in the Connecticut State Legislature, working on the finance appropriation budget, billion-dollar budgets, worked on that for 10 years. And then before that, I was what they call a strong mayor form of government. I was effectively the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and a strong town manager. So I did both for the town of about 32,000, and at that time it was about an $85 million budget. So a lot of experience in both in local government, state government. Sorry, there's not a heck of a lot here that I haven't seen somewhere else before. Just to give you some background, strong background in finance, as well as general management. So with that, just to give you a background, and later if you have any questions about my background, I'm more happy to talk to any of you about that. But the reason for tonight, I first want to thank both boards, and particularly the finance board. I came in here just 2 weeks, so I had a lot to put together in a very quick time frame. And the warrant was already open, and I called up the chairman of the finance meeting, and I asked him, could we hold this meeting tonight because of the timing of when the town meeting was going to be done, when the articles were all going to be given to me by department heads, and when we had to post it in the newspaper and get this meeting. It was all very, very close in terms of timing. I had to do it the timing I did to make it work. Okay? So, and the chairman was gracious enough to help me make it work. Both chairs were gracious enough. So I want to first off tell you how much I appreciate that. Secondly,
hey Ron, I'm sorry, could you please pull the microphone close to you? They're having trouble hearing you.
no problem. Secondly, I'm going to take the mask down for this. Nobody's anywhere near me. But secondly, I want to say that I know that it's important to the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and the entire Board of Selectmen to have a great working relationship with the finance board. We had a long conversation about that, and he made it clear that he wanted that relation to happen and that he wanted me to be part of that. And with that in mind, I went through the other night all of these articles in my explanation with the chairman of the finance committee, so he would be prepared for tonight's meeting as well. So all that was there. You guys essentially got 3 core documents from me. You got the warrant, and you'll find that that's a little bit different than the warrants of your past. I think it's helpful if everybody has a little bit of a small chapter of explanation under each warrant. It makes for a lot less questions, both the finance committee members and also of the general public when we get to the town meeting. If there's some explanation as to what it means, I asked all people involved in putting an article to give me a little summary, and you'll see that summary right underneath the specific article. I'm hoping that helps in all sorts of ways. My department heads like that concept as well. So
excuse me for one moment. Can whatever's going on over there stop? It's really distracting. I don't know what's going on, but you got to stop it.
The ding-dongs tell me that somebody's trying to get in, so I know to pay attention to it. Otherwise, nobody else will ever join this meeting. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so secondarily, the second document that you guys have received obviously is the individual motions that we're proposing. Again, these are all drafts because we all recognize that this has got to be done by FinCom and Board of Selectmen. So while we did all this work, we recognize it's a draft until you guys vote for it. The third thing I gave you was a sort of a financial spreadsheet as to all the articles that involve free cash in that distribution, so you would have a clear understanding of what's coming out of free cash and what it's funding for, and we can talk about that as well. I don't know if you want me to go through the articles. I'm going to suggest that Article 1, 2, and 3, which are the articles that put money into stabilization, capital stabilization, and OPEB, be held until the end, because I have an option I want to talk to you about with those three funds. You'll see generally that the big issue here is that there's $350,000 of free cash, and that's going to be pretty much utilized to give us a balanced budget and to meet a few of the needs that are upcoming in the town. So with that, I haven't done a meeting with you guys before. Do you want me to go through each article? Do the chairs want to bring for the article and have me explain it, and my department explain it? How would you like me to go forward with this?
I'll defer to Ian as to what he would like.
I'm gonna let you do what you want on the 1, 2, and 3. We'll come back to those.
Okay.
And let's start with number 4.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to just explain, basically, you have the explanation. Item number 4 is essentially to balance the town budget for the current year. I think all of you recognize there was a shortfall in the budget. We are going to have to use $205,000 of free cash to balance the current year's budget. So this basically takes money from free cash and puts it into the general revenues for the budget year. Had extensive conversation and worked with the town accountant to make sure this amount was correct, and we looked at a variety of things, and we believe that this is the amount we need to ensure a balanced budget for the current fiscal year. That's $205,000. You'll see that in the actual motion before you. The motion matches, and that matches to the spreadsheet that I gave you.
And Ron, with the 350,000 is not certified as of.
Not as of yet. The town accountant believes it'll be certified within the next 2 weeks, but he gave me that number, and he's extremely confident that number is accurate, and that's what we'll be using.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on article number 4?
So, you want to read your explanation so that everybody that's
Okay,
listening?
so the explanation is what I said. The fiscal year 2021 general fund expenditure budget is presented at annual town meeting, representing an increase over the fiscal 2020 general fund expenditure budget of $1,136,979. The education budget increased by $703,785, and the remainder of the town budgets increased by $433,194. The revenues and other financing sources available to fund this expenditure budget increased by $732,453, leaving a budgetary shortfall of $404,526. Now note that you're already using $200,000 of free cash. That's why it comes to the $205,000. The annual town meeting voted the use of $200,000 of free cash to fund a portion of the shortfall amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. In late June, the town was optimistic that unused CARE Funds Act funding would be available to communities as a revenue source to supplement municipal budgets. Such approval has not occurred at the federal level, and the town will need to use additional free cash to balance the fiscal 2021 budget. I think all the general public is aware that that federal money never came down to the states to help give us shortfalls of revenue. And of course, that CARES Act was never changed to allow that to occur. So that I think is part of the optimistic thing that you guys are all looking at in the budget process.
All right, Tom, you have a question?
Yeah, I thought back in, when did we do, June, the town meeting?
Yep.
I thought that we had looked at increases that were made into expected revenues, et cetera, to make the budget balanced.
We did write in our letter to the town that we did fluff up our town revenue receipts.
Right.
But this was all based upon the governor's budget from, I believe, January, February. And it didn't come true.
So the state revenues that we were anticipating were less than we anticipated? I just see an awful problem with using up, so we talked about free cash, and to have that, a balance like that in there with what's going on and the things that happen, I just think we're going to be in a jam in another few months with, and I said this back in the spring several times, I think we're going to be in a jam if we don't, like, watch out for the free cash.
So if I could comment to that. So the revenue estimates we got from the governor have not changed that much, to be honest with you, from what we expected, what we got. I think my understanding of the problem with the revenues is that it was an anticipation of Mike and others that we would get money from the CARES Act to fund, to help offset the revenues here. That simply didn't occur, and I think that a lot of communities were hoping on that. I think that is the bigger issue than the revenues being different from the state. That's why I think the big problem probably occurred is in the COVID, because the numbers
I don't
the state
think so.
numbers and the numbers we got haven't changed.
That's not the case.
But the revenue, well,
That's not the
I wasn't
case.
here for it, but I'm just
Yeah.
telling you that the revenue numbers from the state are not different than what was proposed by the governor's numbers. So
Yeah.
I
When
don't want to
we,
tell him that because it's
when
not.
when we balanced the budget, we followed the state recommendations in boosting our anticipated town revenue receipts. And it was based upon an early budget, and that's one we went with.
So it wasn't the last budget the governor gave, it was an earlier budget than that.
I believe it was an earlier budget. I'm not sure. I can't tell you exactly the
Yeah.
date. I have to go back through a
Yeah,
lot
because
of.
there's an appropriations committee budget too that you might be talking about.
Yeah,
It's earlier.
I
So that
can't
could
remember.
be.
It would be in my notes, but we
If-
did tell the town. We read a letter at the town meeting. So every single town folk that has showed up to the town meeting is aware that we did this.
that
Yeah,
was
I
gonna
think
be-
there was, if I recall correctly, Karen, there was some skepticism by some of us. I think, Tommy, you as well expressed the same skepticism, that this might be the case.
Yep.
And that those numbers were artificially high. And there was some concern expressed. I don't think the two boards were on the same wavelength for annual last year regarding that. But regardless of that, I think we are in the situation we're in, and we have to move forward with what we have and the reality of the situation. So I'm not sure if there's any other alternative at this point in the game to make any sort of corrections that would prevent the use of free cash.
So
Do we know where our revenues were based on the numbers that we've projected? Because I have not seen that.
So, it's hard to tell because we're not throughout the year. So, we still have taxes that are going to come in and stuff. So I can't give you a good answer to that. Now, I don't think, at least in talking to the collector, we're not behind a lot of revenues. In fact, we might get a lot of 2020, or not a lot, some revenues from 2020 that were pushed out of 2020 into the 2021 budget. So we might actually see a little bit of an increase potentially from this year. But again, you don't know what's happening with COVID and if there's going to be any more relief and people losing their homes. So I think that's really undeterminable right now by the end of the year, what's going to happen in terms of people's ability to pay their mortgages and stuff. So I don't hear from the treasurer, it doesn't look like there's any major bad thing happening, but again, we still got some collections to do.
Ian, this is Pete O'Malley.
Yes.
I'm going to piggyback on what Tom has said. I think it was Tom. This will put a real big dent. It'll wipe out free cash.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I see nothing in the future that says that we're going to be able to miraculously pull more money out for next year. We're kicking the can down the road on this thing very definitely. And we're going to be faced with some exceptionally difficult challenges going into the next budget period. And is that what we want to do?
So through you, Mr. Chairman. So the answer is I don't think, at least at this point, we have a choice. You're absolutely correct. Putting together the next budget year has an automatic $205,000 deficit built into it. So that is going to be a significant challenge that we're going to have to work through next year. We don't know what extraordinary revenues might come in throughout the year that might help us gradually deal with that issue versus having to deal with it all in a one-year process. But, I'm going to need some time. I've been here 2 weeks. I'm going to need some time to work with the finance board and to work with my staff to figure out what we do with that $205,000 deficit and how we figure out that problem. But you are absolutely correct that is a legitimate problem that the finance committee and board of selectmen and I are going to have to figure out for the next budget year.
And we can also have a conversation too. I mean, there are items here that if we choose to prioritize having that free cash available, that we can talk about and take a look at. I mean, there's some capital items that I know they're direly needed. They've been vetted by CIPC. But, if we have to tighten our belts, then maybe those things can make it another season. We'll have to have that discussion.
There's not a lot. I mean, and really, it's not the 205. We're also already giving 200,000. So really, it's $405,000 coming out of free cash over the time frame.
So again, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to say I 100% agree with you, and I said that Karen, one of the long-term goals we have to have is to take completely out from free cash for operating budget purposes. So that is in addition to the 205, but we are not gonna be able to do that in any 1 year, so we're gonna have to work together to slowly get off it. But I'm gonna tell you right now, that was my goal. I think it's a complete mistake to use free cash for operating budget, and that would be my goal to work with you to figure out how we can get off of that.
Well, we've been working that way for years now. We've been trying to do that, but every time we turn around, the school budget comes in way higher than we can afford. There's other things come, so we haven't had no choice but to try to do that. So we don't want to do that. We never have wanted to do that. So,
Completely
you know, we've tried to stay away from it. So, we got to just tighten up the belt, I guess, some other places. But, and I just wanted to go back one comment before. I don't think the revenues were overly estimated. I believe what happened with Dan was that we usually were estimated income, and then we're very conservative what we use for a number to go. And this past year, we just kind of brought those up closer to what our estimates would have been for that free cash coming in. We didn't go overly excessive, I don't believe. Right.
We only fluffed up them by $85,000.
Right. So we didn't go like anticipate we were going to do better. We just kind of went up a little bit within what would be an anticipated amount normally.
All right, let's move on to, no other questions on that right now. We'll come back to them, but let's go through each one.
Okay. So you're not, so I take it you're not gonna vote on each article, we're gonna go vote at the end, is that what you're planning?
Yeah, I'd like to go through everything, that way everybody knows what's all there.
That's fine. Article number 5, I believe Joe is on Zoom. Joe?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So when we voted the water and sewer budget in the springtime, we changed the format to include this little spreadsheet you see here that says salaries, expenses, debt principal, debt interest. And we made a mistake. We called for the capital outlay, which is the money we've been borrowing every year for the 5-year plan. And when I talked it over with the accountant, he explained that the way this is written, it implies we're borrowing an additional 595 on top of the 3 million. Because we already had approval to borrow the 3 million over 5 years. A couple town meetings previous, we didn't need to include it here. So that gets zeroed out, and the budget basically goes down. But we have to vote that to make it legitimate. Any questions?
Maybe some change, if you can explain the salary differential? Because the original vote was 261,994, now it's 294,794, Joe?
Most of it is overtime. We did not increase any personnel at water and sewer. If anything, they've gone down a little bit. Historically, I didn't know that the town put the overtime that's needed for water and sewer operations inside the salary line item, and that's all it is. But the salaries have not increased from this springtime, nor have the number of positions increased. We just included more salary-related items in that line item. I hope that answers your question.
So Joe, does that mean you took a certain percentage more of a certain individual or certain individuals from your department and put more of that into water and sewer?
It does not. What it means is when I wrote this spreadsheet this spring, I put overtime under expenses or in some other line item. And after talking it over with the town accountant, we decided to put it in salaries.
So I take it, we'll see that overtime and come back to us in another item?
Correct. If you did like I think I sent those to the finance committee. If you compared them, you'd see that it's just been moved. It hasn't changed.
Yeah, there's no other article though, if that's what you're asking for overtime.
No, I was just looking for the account numbers and showing what that, so where that 32,800 was sitting available, I take it. in another account.
No, it's been part of the water and sewer budget right along. It's just when I wrote the spreadsheet, and again, this is the first time we did a spreadsheet like this. I didn't include overtime. That's all it was. The overtime was already in the water and sewer budget. All I did was add it to the total salaries, and that's why that's gone up a little.
Okay.
Question. So Joe, what, the 236,800 under expenses, what is that? That's an increase, correct?
Where are you, Tom? I'm sorry.
Expenses, 236,000 change?
Right. Again, we moved some stuff around. That's all it is. I haven't increased anything from the budget that was proposed in the spring. The only thing that's changed is we added more stuff to it. But if you look at the actual line item budget that we sent to finance before last town meeting and the one you just got, they're pretty much the same. We just put stuff in different boxes.
Okay, and the overall budget itself went down, a decrease of
Correct.
363?
Yep.
I want to make a motion that we approve this quickly. I'm just. My
Ian,
water and sewer bill.
did you get everything?
We just don't have the line item budget. We did not get one.
All right, we'll get you one. That's not a big deal.
Because that's what I was trying to see where everything else came from, Joe. Any other questions for Joe on that one? Okay.
Article number 6, Mr. Chairman. Joe, just stay by for this.
Absolutely. I'll be here until we're done. I just want to thank everybody.
Yeah, no problem. I can explain Article 6, but just in case the board members have any questions. So in water sewer, I think everybody understands we have something called a retained earnings account, which essentially is like free cash. It's a surplus that's used, and often a lot of it's used for capital items or kept there in case there's an emergency. What the town doesn't have is it doesn't have a reserve account for, God forbid, there's some kind of emergency, a sewer line breaks, something happens with the water. This $50,000 just is going to come out of retained earnings and put it into reserve account. Essentially the same thing as having a reserve in the town budget in case some major thing happens with the sewer line. This is sort of a common business practice. I was surprised that this doesn't already exist because it exists anywhere I've ever been to have some reserve. But this essentially isn't any new money. It's just taking money out of retained earnings and putting it into an account for emergencies. That's what an MMA recommended thing. It's sort of standard business in towns throughout the state. So I don't see this as anything new and unique. It's good business practice is all it is.
Joe, didn't we talk about doing this last year? Setting up this account? Or was for that, just for capital?
But it did get, no, we did talk about setting something up like this in springtime, but it took a back burner simply because we wanted a compressed number of articles so we could, for safety reasons, get through that warrant as quickly as possible in the spring.
And I believe that at the end of the year, if you don't use this for any emergency, it just falls back into retained earnings and should be put in next year's budget as a new item. So it's this reserve account, Joe, if I'm correct, every year you're going to put in 50 grand because the 50 grand you didn't use should fall back into the retained earnings, correct?
Correct. And just by means of example, I paid for a $17,000 repair at a pump station today.
Question. So, but with the water and sewer enterprise, which, as you probably know, we just changed that around this past year there was a lot of issues going on with this. You wouldn't, for a repair or something, you just wouldn't use what you have in that enterprise account? That money is not available to you to use like that?
So retained earnings would not be able to be used unless, I believe here, because we're talking about town, you'd have to actually have a town meeting to allow that to be used. So you couldn't use it. You can only use the money that was in each individual line item that was approved. So no, the money would sit there unless it was, I believe, a vote at town meeting. Sometimes it can be done by town council or selectmen, but I believe it's a town meeting to take out of retained earnings.
Well, probably, but I think in the past, it probably was just used out of the other account rather than.
It shouldn't be.
No, I'm just saying, okay, so this would just put it there so it could be used then rather than having to go to a meeting.
Correct, in case of emergency, because otherwise you'd have to wait for a town meeting and you'd be.
And this is coming out of funds that we would have on hand from the enterprise account, not additional funds.
Correct, so think of it as your surplus. It's put into like a reserve account you have for the town. It's there, but you don't use it. In this case, we're allocating 50 grand for emergency purpose, but it's the same money. There's no new money here. There's no new taxation. It's just your surplus being put into an account in case there's an emergency.
Can I, quick question. I know that when we combined the accounts, there were a lot of, I believe it was water users that were unhappy because that account had an excess surplus and the sewer did not. We're going to be asked the question as to where these $50,000 came from, and what it's going to be used for potentially in the future, because there are still a lot of water users in town that are not happy about that situation. So I just want to bring that up as a kind of a point comment.
And truthfully, Mr. I can't answer that question because
We don't know.
I wasn't
I mean,
here for
obviously
the
we don't know.
combination. I'm not sure how that water sewer enterprise, combined enterprise works. But if there's separate fees for each one, right, different taxes for each one,
Right.
then I can understand why you could in effect have sewer people paying for water issues, water people paying, and they don't use them. So that's something I'll have to, Joe, maybe you can explain, but I'm not sure that process here, how that works.
Well, right now it wouldn't make any difference because the accounts are combined. So this 50,000 would come out of the revenues for there. So that doesn't make any difference. It's the previous time, what you just said was, it wasn't sewer people paying for it, it was water paying for old sewer bills is what it was.
Question?
Can I jump in just quick?
Go ahead.
It's my understanding that when the two enterprises were dissolved and then combined to make one enterprise, which is valid for the next 3 years, all of the existing retained earnings were transferred back to that one enterprise. So to answer your question, it's all one at this time. We have to maintain two separate budgets for both water and sewer, and we do that.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Through the chair, Darren Ross, just a question. Why wouldn't we, Joe, at least put in, it has nothing to do with us, why wouldn't we put 60 grand in there or 70 grand in there? Because you already said you spent 60 grand. I'm just wondering if we're shooting low I'd rather have you have the money when you need it and you're just gonna roll back into the regular budget. It has nothing to do with anybody in this room. It's you guys. So I'd like to see us, if you think there should be more money in there, we should amend this to put more money. I mean, let's do it once. Do you agree with that, Joe? This is Darren.
I do agree. But I also think because of some of the history that went down and people are a little gun shy regarding their, how we spent water money in the past, that maybe we start here and then see how we make out and then try again next year and take another crack at maybe 75. Originally, I think I asked for 75. 50 seemed more palatable with the people involved.
Okay. I just, I would hate to see you have, undershoot it if you need it. That's all.
Yeah, but one thing to keep in mind too, that in that 60,000, if I'm correct, that we had separate articles to cover those emergency repairs for that bigger number at the water plant. So that was a separate amount we appropriated.
Okay. All right. Perfect. I'm done.
In all frankness, when that failure occurred, though, we did not have that money on hand.
Correct.
And we used that money, money in our existing capital program to get it started and then put it on that after the fact. So I agree. I think it's prudent to have something on hand in case of an emergency. Believe me, I hope we don't have any more, but they do come up.
My comment always was it enough money? Not that we need it on hand. I agree with you 100%, Joe. I'm just saying, but maybe $50,000 this year, make it palatable, and then 75 next year or whatever. I just don't want to play catch up all the time.
So through Mr.
Fair
Chair,
enough.
because that was a big conversation we had among us, and we talked a lot about that. And Joe had brought up to me about some concerns over past debates over water sewer. And he felt that we came to a conclusion that we thought that this was a good place to start, and then we'll build it up from there. But let's take a look at that. Would be, if there's going to be any attraction to make this an issue, this amount is a little easier to deal with, and then we can build it from there if there's no heat,
Understood.
But one more comment, Joe, if I'm not mistaken, if those emergency repairs at the water treatment plant, if you keep the program on the maintenance and the work that should be done in the proper cycle, which hadn't been done before, that you were doing, I mean, you were doing it where it's, that's what a big chunk of that came from.
I believe you're talking about asset management
Yeah.
for the plant, and we're trying to get that up and running.
Right.
But unfortunately, similar to what you just said, you can't always predict a failure, nor can you budget for it. So even if we had, we're still not there yet, Tom. We're starting to get the asset management program up off the ground, but I couldn't honestly predict that at this time.
Any other comments, questions?
This is Leah, if I may, through the chair.
Go ahead, Leah.
Is there a way, this might be touched upon kind of Mitch's comment about the accountability to our water sewer users. Would this be accounted for kind of on the back end as far as 50,000 goes in, water needs to use 30,000 of it, then there's 20,000 left, then sewer needs 10,000, then, and that's the back end accounting as to which water or sewer is getting to use that money?
I don't know if I necessarily understand.
I think, Leah, Joe had mentioned earlier that the water sewer keeps separate budgets. And I think that would be tracked, but it is one singular enterprise account. And Joe, correct me, I think Leah's question was, are we going to be able to track if there is an expenditure, it's an emergency, whether it's water or sewer related, and report back to the public that what it was used for. And I think we have a clear understanding of what that is my understanding.
Well, we have an obligation to do that, but to be able to actually figure it out on the backside, it could change from year to year. It's a little bit too variable.
Right. I guess I just wanted to make sure that that level of accountability that we were confident in with merging the accounts would also continue for this reserve account also.
Yep.
Mitch,
Thank you.
really quick, Mitch.
Go ahead, Dan.
Leah, yeah, I am tracking both of those separately, and I would track any expenditures from this emergency fund the same way, so that we can be accountable to the voters and the users at some point in the future.
Thank you.
One final thing, I mentioned it here in the explanation. Both Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection and the Massachusetts Department of Revenue both strongly suggest for enterprises of this nature that you have a reserve. So I just want to point that out. We're doing what the guidance documents tell us to do.
Okay. I don't think there was.
Okay. Article 7, Mr. Chairman. So Article 7 is a small request. It's basically, and I'll read the article. It's just to vote appropriate available funds, including free cash, the sum of $800 to the account. Assessors purchase services to update the town's Access GIS or take any action relating to. Basically, the Vision software was updated, and when it was updated, it caused a problem with GIS, and the $800 brings GIS with the new software to now work. That's all. So it's a very small adjustment, but it just makes GIS work again.
Comments, questions?
Who uses that GIS?
Usually it's the land use offices, but I'm not sure. Is anybody on from the assessor's office or the land use office?
You don't use it.
The GIS is usually GIS is used by Public Works and Planning and Zoning. Any of the land use officials usually use GIS.
It's
Fire
also,
has it too.
yeah,
Fire
and
has it too.
the general public uses that feature all the time. I mean, I used it 3 times last week, so it's
I
It's a
use it
pretty
all the time
popular
myself.
item.
yeah, it's a neat feature.
Any other comments, questions?
I'll just say with the online permitting system, it comes in very easy. People online at home can look at that, parcel numbers and all that, to fill out the permits, otherwise you could call and come in.
It saves a lot of staff time and
Awesome. All right, Article 8.
Okay. Article number 8. I think everyone here recognizes it was a transfer in a new town administrator, and that process took some time. The police chief acted as acting town administrator. There was some dollars involved in that. There was also dollars involved in the salary difference between the old town administrator and myself. The former town administrator, because of because of COVID, wasn't able to take vacation time. There was a significant payout of his vacation time, not only for this year, but last year's as well. So all that resolved in a $25,000 difference that we need to put the funds from free cash into that to make that account take care of all of those issues.
Questions? Comments? No. Anybody out there? No? All right.
Okay. Article 9 is basically PEG access. Now that the majority of the town meetings are on Zoom, they have additional audio and video feeds that must be recorded. They're working on around additional needs by using fewer channels than the total available to us. They're dissatisfied with the quality of the recordings. Frankly, none of us have ever dealt with this whole new Zoom and videos from home. The best solution is to upgrade TV production equipment, which they had already planned. Basically, this takes money, the money they have in, I'll call it their retained earnings, their money in, takes it out of that, which is usually used for capital items, and puts it in for capital items. So we can purchase the equipment they need to, frankly, update so we get clear communications with regards to all this online stuff that we're doing.
It's just a transfer within their own budget.
Yeah, it's all in their own budget. There's no general fund budget.
No cost for the town. Number 10?
Number 10, Massachusetts, if I say that correctly. I guess years ago there was a retirement fund for employees. It was a town retirement fund. It's now a regional retirement fund. There's one employee left in that old system that worked in the Rutland schools prior to regionalization, who's eligible for sick time buyback. This buys back and pays that employee out, and that should be the last of that issue. It's $11,838.
We always hear that this is the last one of these. And sometime, one of these years, it's got to be the last one. I've been dealing with the last one of these retirement things for the last 20 years. Honest.
You could be right. I wasn't here, so I can't say it. But
well, anybody in the room will admit that that's true, right? All right.
Can you hear me? This is Becky Tuttle.
Hi, Becky.
Hi. So yeah, I've actually the list that we have shows everybody that has been paid out, and this, according to them, is the last one.
According to them, good, Becky. Nice move.
Want to take a bet on that, Becky?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and it's just something we have no choice. Yeah. No, it's part of the agreement.
Yep.
Number 11.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is an interesting one. So, we are using free cash for a lot of things, and generally what I like to use free cash for is one-time capital purchases. That's really the ideal thing. One of the things that we can't do is we can't ignore capital purchases, particularly equipment and things, because we ignore it, it just deteriorates, and that doesn't helping any of us. It's just really damaging the town, using past assets and burning them out. In this case, the library has a fire alarm system that hasn't been working correctly for some time. They need a new fire alarm system. This was the #1 priority of the Capital Improvement Committee. But because I knew that we had very little free cash, I looked for other sources of funding for this one to help us out. So I guess this Naquag Green Project Fund has been completed to the tune of $8,920 was left in that account. So thanks to Dan for advising me that that money was sitting there doing nothing. So we basically are going to transfer that money into this capital account for the reserve for the fire alarm, and we use $5,430 of free cash to make this happen. This was the #1 priority, and the next item is their #2 priority. So we can talk about, those are the only two things I have money for to do from free cash. Or were other requests that weren't higher priority for the Capital Improvement Committee. Those are not being funded.
There's no issue in taking that money from Naquag. I mean, that's
the Naquag. I assume Dan was the one that gave this to me, so I assume it's a town account, and it's just a closure of the town account, the capital account that was there. Correct, Dan?
Yeah, if I can jump in. Yeah, and could I amend the amount to $8,930? That's the balance that's remaining in that account. That goes back several years. So that money is on the books, and we can use it for another capital purchase, of which this fire alarm system.
Just add $10 to close out the account. Is that what you're doing, Dan?
Yes, please.
Okay, so just make it $14,360.
And we'll take 10 off the free cash.
Yeah.
We're saving free cash already. Look at this.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So I guess I'd just say make it $14,360, and You know, $10 ain't gonna mean nothing anyway.
You have any questions?
All right.
Article number 12 is the other priority of the capital improvement committee. Obviously, this is something that Joe feels strongly about. He's got a 20-year-old truck that's on its way out. We're going into winter. God knows how bad our winters can be. This is the first time, you know, I'm so used to DPW directors coming with new stuff. Not often I see one try to save money and come out with for a used truck. It's a larger dump. He's asking for $50,000 to buy that. I've had a long conversation with him. He believes he can buy it, that there are these type of trucks out there, and that he could get a good truck for 50 grand. Here, again, to try not to use all the free cash, we're taking $10,000 out of the road maintenance account. Joe agreed that that was possible. Transferring that from road fund maintenance to purchase this truck, $40,000 from free cash, that gives us a total of 50 grand. To me, this in my mind is a priority. In wintertime, you want to have the right equipment on hand, given we don't know how bad the storms will be this year.
Snow on Friday.
Sorry?
Gonna snow Friday.
It's going to snow this Friday. This is something that I guess the chairman of the capital improvement committee, in my conversation with him, is he actually went over and looked at the truck, and he believed that, I guess the capital improvement committee believed that this was a priority and a real need, and they supported this.
Yeah, CIPC, as a member of that board, we did take a tour of the facility, I believe in the spring, or maybe it was winter last year, Joe. Some of the equipment's in rough shape and needs to be replaced. I guess my question, Joe, is if this gets approved, how quick is the turnaround on purchasing one of these vehicles?
We should be able to get it wrapped up by December. We have to look at like 3 vendors. So we've looked at one in New Hampshire and I think 2 in Vermont. We're in contact with one in Mass as well. They are available. I'd like to think we can get it done by December.
And just so you know, Mr. Chairman, under $50,000 doesn't need an invitation to bid process. So this can be done through requests for quotes and stuff. So the procurement process is relatively quick on this.
Joe, this comes with a plow and other winter equipment, a sander. Don't we have extras of those, or?
We really don't. I mean, we have a couple extra old plows in case we could use in case of an emergency. But I talked to the staff on, we have now, and we've purchased vehicles like this over the last 5 years, a couple of them. And and the ones I've looked at online with the staff come with a plow.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, moving.
Okay, Article 13. Yeah, so this is generally going to be explanations for 13 and 14. But whenever there's a solar project in town, they're generally, instead of just using the property value from general property taxes, you use what's called a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes. The assessor we use has done this on a number of other pilots. Basically, this is just allowing us to negotiate a pilot agreement for both of these next 2 projects. One is on the roof of Glenwood, the other one's on the roof of Central Tree Middle School. Had a long conversation with the assessor about this because I was concerned. I wanted to make sure that the pilots pretty much mirrored what the value would have been into the regular property taxes. I felt really comfortable after that conversation that he's done a really good job in negotiating those pilots so that we are getting a fair value in terms of the pilots. So I'm comfortable that we're going to be in good shape with this based upon the conversation we have with the assessor.
Any other questions on these?
So Ian, this is Pete O'Malley, through the
Yep.
chair. So this is a reduction in revenue.
No, it's not a reduction. Matter of fact, what I tried to just explain is it's new revenue that comes into the town based upon the value of the equipment that the solar company puts on the land. Usually that's done through an assessed value based upon the actual equipment. What the pilot does is tries to get that same amount of money through a contractual agreement between the solar company and the town. So no, it's not a reduction of money. In fact, it should be pretty close to the same value if it was simply taxed as new personal property.
So it's income coming in.
It's income coming in, correct? Yeah.
Through the chair, so what is the estimated revenue gonna be for these things?
So the revenue is based on each individual project by the equipment that's being put on that and the amount, and that equipment tells you can tell, but I guess the size of the equipment by how many kilowatts it's producing. But what he would be doing is working with each of these individual agreements. I think they're both with Solar, the company is the name. So he will meet with them. He will look at the property, the equipment they're putting on that property, and then he develops a pilot based upon the equipment that's coming on. Now, in regular general property taxation, every year that equipment depreciates and taxes go down, but they usually develop it into a payment schedule where it stays consistent through the life of the 20 years of the project. That's generally the way I believe it's going to be done. So, you know,
We have no estimate yet.
no, because we haven't even, this is
This
to
is
allow
just
us
to get it going.
negotiate. Right, this gets us to negotiate.
Okay.
Through the chair, I assume they've assessed the condition of the roofs. Do we know if that's?
I have not been involved in that discussion, and quite frankly, I hope that common sense says that the solar company wouldn't put on a roof that needs repairs prior to the 20 years. So in order to put on these roofs, it should have a 20-year life. I have not done that assessment.
I just don't think the roofs.
But I
are
can't imagine,
new, so
we can double check on that, but
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
obviously you're
Don't
not gonna
take
do
the
repairs.
solar guy's words for it.
because I mean,
Let's
I don't
double check.
recall.
It'd be a
roofs
pretty
being
stupid
done all the
investment if
time.
they have to put it on there and have it ripped down, because once they have that power generation, they sell that generation of power. They have to disrupt that, that costs them big money, so
I think we're.
I can't imagine they were
right.
dumb enough to do that, but I'll look at that.
Yeah, I was just reminded that they're already installed too. Yeah,
They can't be
so,
installed if they haven't even created. Are they installed? How can they be installed? The pilot hasn't even been created.
absolutely.
On Central
Yeah.
Tree they're
Are
on.
they, are they built on one of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, usually.
Glenn was already there too?
Our-
Oh, I didn't see that. Excuse me. So my question is, when they put these arrays up and they're built, and like I said, I didn't realize Glenwood was, but I know Central Tree is up there and it's been there for a number of months now, but it's not turned on.
They have to get approval to turn on through the.
Okay,
The
but
public
Naquag
utility
School had them on there and it was, if not months, it was over a year or plus or whatever before that switch got turned on. I mean, I'm just asking the question
I
for
don't
information.
know. Matter of fact, my instinct or my thought with this was that they weren't even built yet, but now you have to go back and look at that. So the taxes become due at a certain date. After construction, they turn on the product, they start charging taxes. So based upon what I'm hearing from Seth is that they can't be on, neither one of them can be on yet, because I'd be surprised that they haven't set the pilot earlier than today. So the assessor here has done a bunch of them, so he knows what he's doing. But I want to go back and double check the timing of that. He may be looking as a final step to get the pilot approved, so then the things can be turned on. But they got to get approval from the state to turn them on anyway. So I just don't know why you would have it up and running and then do a pilot afterwards. You should do it during that process. So
Or the
I need
beginning
that.
of it, right?
What's that?
I would think almost the beginning of it. You would
Right.
start the process with this.
I mean, even if you
I thought
didn't
we
do this
voted
pilot,
on it
right? Let's assume you didn't do the pilot. He can go back and charge personal property taxes on it anyway.
This just
The
says
assessor
Glenwood
can
here.
tax
This
it
doesn't
anyway.
have a vote.
This just sets up a steadier stream
Oh.
of the 20-year life for it. But you don't necessarily need a pilot because you can tax them with the personal property taxes anyway. So, I think the pilots are the better way to do this, and everybody in the state's doing it. I just got to check the timing. That's all.
Well, the unfortunate thing for me is, this is like, I sell somebody a car, and then I tell them what I'm going to pay. They're going to tell me to pay for it. I mean, it's already there. We're behind the eight ball. Why are we doing it now?
So again,
So they could say, I'm going to give you $20 a year.
no, they can't. So the assessor has the right to assess property based on its fair market value.
And they have the argue,
They
they
can
have
do
the
that.
right to dispute it.
They would have to. I mean, they have to go to court. I mean, it'd be a long process. They'd have to go to court.
your property tax.
It's a property tax.
It's already there. That's the interesting thing for me.
So it goes to the timing of when the taxes are due and the system is built. Again, I didn't have that conversation, but there's no way that the assessor would not tax it when the tax was due, either through the pilot or through a regular property tax.
Okay.
I have to check the timing to see exactly how it plays out, but either way, he's going to tax it using one format or the other.
Okay, well, I would hope that, 1 second, I would hope that going forward, that I would think this should be done first, and hopefully the select board is gonna be starting looking at it, so as well as you. I don't think they should be up on the buildings without this being done.
But that was to be part of my comment was, I thought we had voted on this before, but maybe we didn't. Can we get an explanation
So my
from
guess
the
is somebody had
assessors or
to
something?
vote on the contract to put these on the roof. So there must have been
Right.
a contract. This is just the taxes that go. The
No,
contract
no, I
would have
understand
happened
that, but
pre
I
this.
thought when we've done a number of these, and I thought with this pilot it was all inclusive of the contract to do it and the payments.
No.
I'm just saying,
No,
Well,
the pilots are separate from the contract to do it. But it,
that's why I'd like to see what some of the old ones said, because I believe they were in there before.
Yeah.
But again, I want to go back to my original comment. Again, can we get an explanation from whether it's the assessors or whoever does these, that why these get put up this early and then sit there and wait? Maybe it's because National Grid, I don't know, but it seems to me that those panels are up there making electricity and it's going absolutely nowhere.
I don't think they're making electricity, but we'll check it out.
Well, as far as my knowledge is, if you put a solar panel out, it's making electricity. It may not be plugged into anything, but it's making electricity. It could go somewhere.
So the answer is I'll get a letter from the assessor for all you guys explaining the timing of it and what they're doing, so you guys have it.
Yeah, what's involved, yeah.
Yeah, and I truly just don't know that.
That would be good.
But I will get that information. It's a legitimate question. So I'll have the assessor give us an explanation of the timing of all that. Okay?
Sorry guys, this is Leah. Mitch, if I may.
Go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, Ron, I don't remember all the specific details. I do remember when Jeff and I were on the board shortly after we joined, there was a lot of discussion with Select and consideration that possibly Central Tree was going to get a roof out of the deal and everything. I'm not sure. I remember there was conversation about if the district was getting involved or what the district level was, because Rutland is the only town without municipal electricity. So we were kind of in a unique situation that we could do this. So I remember there was a lot of conversation, and I'm in agreement that I thought we had already done pilots for Naquag and Glenwood. And then Central Tree, there was considerations that probably needed a new roof and whether that was going to be a wise investment for Select or not. So I don't remember the timeline, but it has to have been within the last 3 years, 2.5 years.
So Leah, I'll go back and look at it and see the deal. Frankly, I'd like to go back and look at it for a variety of reasons, but I'd like to understand what the schools are getting out of this too, because that contract must have given some revenue to the school for allowing this to occur outside of the pilot. So I don't know the details of these yet. It's something I'm going to have to delve into to find out what's going on.
All right, let's move on to number 15.
Yeah, Chief, if you want, I'll just let you go. This is to allow call firefighters and part-time officers to buy back time in the pension account. And Chief, if you wanted to find that a little bit better for me.
Sure.
The fire chief has asked for this specific article.
This came up through Worcester County Retirement, sent a letter to several members, full-time members of the police and fire department that had previously purchased credited time in the retirement system with their own money for years of service when they worked for the town in a part-time capacity. Because there was some challenge to this law in Plymouth County Retirement Board, Worcester County looked into it a little deeper and realized that several towns in Worcester County had not adopted this section of Mass General Law that allows call firefighters and provisional police officers to purchase anything greater than 5 years of credible time. So what this basically means is there's no impact to the town. This is all, the burden is on the employee themselves to purchase with their own funds, whether they transfer a 401k to the Worcester County Retirement Funds to cover this, but it allows them to take years of service that they had previously worked. Worcester County Retirement looks at those number of hours and prorates those hours into 1 year blocks or 1 year months. And then they assess a cost to that, which the employee would pay. When they do come up to the retirement age, those years are counted at the end. So that allows them, so if they started in the retirement system later in life, they can basically buy some of those years. Just so you know, no one in the town pays Social Security, so we are not eligible for Social Security. So our only retirement is through the retirement board, and any funds that we do through a deferred comp on our own. So this basically provision of this law just allows, it's a local provision, allows the town meeting to vote and allow the process to continue. So technically you could say it's past practice that they've been allowing this. It's just they realized that this town had not accepted this provision.
Any questions? Comments?
How do they determine cost when you buy back years?
That's a question for Becky. I can't answer that.
And it's actually the retirement board that.
The retirement board determines the cost to the employee.
Right. I don't know the exact calculation. This is Becky Tuttle, obviously. I don't know exactly how they calculate it, but it's based on the years that they would have put in and the time served and their salaries during that time that they worked for part-time service.
Thank you, Becky.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Anything else?
Okay, Article 16, the explanation for this article, as the Detective Sundry's death was declared a line of duty death and has been recognized by both the town of Rutland and the U.S. federal government. As such, Massachusetts has not recognized COVID-19 death as LOD death, therefore special legislation is required. The police chief is putting this forward, and obviously this will benefit the family if this occurs. I got to admit that when I looked at this, I was a little baffled as to why the legislature would do something for one individual employee and not going to make this a policy across the board for all policemen. I talked to Senator Goby's aide today, who talked to me about this. He says, in fact, they have done special legislation for individual people across the state. So while it doesn't make sense to me, they do it. There is discussions about this already in legislation that impacts policemen and firemen going forward, but not backwards. This would have to be retroactive to take care of him. So the existing legislation is being proposed. I suggested maybe you should just amend that and make it retroactive, and that is part of the discussion as well. But they felt we should at least get on the table and send it. They feel it's a stronger coming from town meeting than just from the Board of Selectmen. But in fact, the legislature can ignore this if they choose to. They can act on it. But it's the town basically saying, we feel that this officer family deserves him because this is essentially the same as injured on duty. Chief, I don't know if you want to add to it, if that was a good explanation.
I think you covered it very well. Thank you.
Any questions? Comments? No. It's just us writing a letter. That's all it is, and it's coming from the whole town.
Yeah.
So, all right, 17.
Article number 17. This is an interesting one to understand because I know that I struggled when I read the legal hoopla to do this. But essentially, at the annual town meeting, there was a vote, or an intent, I guess, to create an agricultural preservation fund. Somehow it got converted to be an open space preservation stabilization fund. Instead, $500 was put into it. So essentially, they want to make it an agricultural preservation fund, switch the $500 that went to the open space and put it into the agricultural fund. So basically, I think what the intent was, somehow if something happened, it changed at the town meeting, and they just want to get back to what they originally did. The reason I said it was complicated is somehow the town lawyer was involved in this, and he drafted this long opinion about this. It was like trying to read law backwards. It was just very hard to understand. But effectively, it just sets up the account the way they wanted it to be in the first place.
Tom?
We had much discussion about this, and that's what we said back then, so. But
Any other
So
questions?
who currently then has authorizations to manage those funds?
Well, currently, I guess it's under the stabilization fund, so I don't know if anybody is in charge of this open space preservation fund, this $500. Usually these monies, quite frankly, where I've ever been, it's always been had to be the commission writes to the town manager, and the town manager approves expenditures for it. That's generally how it works. Commissions don't get, they vote to authorize the spending for something, whatever they're going to do. But usually it's the town administrator approves it. I don't know if that's the exact process here, but that's the process used pretty much everywhere else.
Peter?
Excuse me, Mitch, for a direct answer to your question, AgCom is the organization that has authority to put money in and get money out of that fund. They're the only group who do. all this does, as Ron says, is it cleans up the language to say what the fund is. So I'm not sure, Ron, what the exact authorization mechanism is, if they ever spend money to purchase with $500. But
The reason, I mean, they don't have staff to spend this money. There's usually no staff underneath it. So a lot of times this is done through the standing chairs. Often these kind of things are done. But whenever these commissions this commission or anything need to spend money, they usually send a letter with a vote of what they voted to do, and the town administrator approves it kind of automatically, as long as it's within the budget. That's the normal process, because they don't have anybody do administrative work that happens through us. So it's not really the town administrator saying yes or no. It's just that the town administrator is the one that has to work the accounting process for it, the billing process.
So it's good.
The money's there. We're just changing.
Just moving it from one account to another, renaming the account effectively, and saying who has the authority to do it. It's very minor.
Okay.
The same. Okay, Mr. Chairman, there's two alternate sort of articles I wanted to talk about and to explain why I wanted you to hold 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
So at the end of, I think it's in your motions article, it's something that says optional articles. If you guys want to find it, I'll explain it. So the first article, because I think all of you know, the bylaw committee is trying to update the town's bylaws, and quite frankly, they're way out of date, and there's a lot of work that's needed. So Peter's in the room, and me and Peter had a long conversation about it. There's not enough money in the regular legal account to have legal review of all these different bylaws that they're looking at. So Peter came to me and said, how are we going to deal with this issue? We need legal review. So we wanted to authorize $8,000 to come from free cash. As you can see, we're using all the free cash. So the free cash that's available, in my opinion, is Articles 1, 2, and 3. So let's talk about Articles 1, and 2, and 3 in relation to this article. So the $350,000 of free cash, if you wanted to fund, and it's a recommendation, 1, 2, and 3, the concept is to take 5% of free cash and put it into each of these articles. So that would be, if you look at your financial sheet, that's $17,500 for each of the 3 articles. The stabilization fund right now, and Dan and me had a lot of conversation about this, right now is about 5%, which is where it should be. We always like to do more, but it's at the right place. There's $1 million, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, I got these numbers from Rebecca,
Yep.
but the sum in free cash or stabilization right now is $1,003,005 is what's in that account. And as Dan and me talked, that's pretty much around the 5% where we want it to be. Article 2 is the capital stabilization fund. There's $169,170. Now, in theory, because of what it's designed for, we could take money from the truck for this, but we want to keep building that account, so we're not taking any money. But I would suggest we don't need to put money into it, given that we have very little free cash. The third item is the OPEB. If I was putting money anywhere, I would probably recommend OPEB. We have $388,617. OPEB's a multi-million-dollar problem. You want to put money into it. Sometimes I put zero into it. Sometimes I put a lot of money into it. But in my opinion, if you're going to put money anywhere, I think I'd put money in there other than the other 2 accounts. But if you don't, if you want to fund, I'm going to talk about the second proposed article. I think we need to fund the $8,000 for the bylaw thing. So I think we could take $8,000 out of any. If you want to put the $17,500 in each of those accounts, we need to take $8,000 from somewhere. The second article is a little bit different, and I want to explain the second article. So the second article is an article request from the Recreation Department. Right now, the Recreation Director is paid out of that revolving account for activities. So her salary comes out of the account. Obviously, with COVID, she's not able to do a lot of the programs that generated revenue for that account. Therefore, she can't pay her salary from that account. And there's a lot of discussion is, should she work or not work or whatever. So I had a long conversation with her about this today. As it turns out, I asked her to give me a accounting of the account and how much money is into it. And it turns out that there's enough money in that account to pay her salary throughout the end of the year. So there's not a required transfer amount that we have to do that for. The problem is that her and others understand that there's a potential significant problem with the pump in the town pool. And that is expected cost of $10,000, and they're not comfortable that that pump is going to last much longer and then it might break down. So, I think that you want to do something to make sure that that pool is open for the spring. So I think I would propose, instead of adding any money to her account, now recognize that by paying this money out of her account for her salary, it's going to drain this account down to closer to zero. She tells me that about 3 months before July 1st, hopefully with COVID tones down, she'll be able to raise some revenue. So it won't go completely dry if she can do activities depending upon COVID. Either way, right now we can get through the year with this account. I would propose that you guys put an extra $10,000 from Articles 1, 2, or 3, wherever, and put it in, add it to the reserve account for the town, so that, God forbid, the pool breaks down, the Board of Selectmen will have the 10 grand to take care of the pool, so that there's some way to address it. I just don't think you want to be in a situation where we have no capital money to address the pool issue. So I think that you want to put money into reserve and let the Board of Selectmen, deal with the issue if it becomes an issue. If not, it just falls back into free cash for next year. But I think you need to be prepared some way to deal with that pool issue. The whole issue of the recreation director's salary, I think next year, another budget problem we have to address is to take it out of this revolving account, put the salary in the regular budget, and just use the revolving account revenue as revenue to the town, and not have that salary be dependent upon, money raised from that account to that account.
Put capital money into last year. I feel like we made a repair to the
2 years.
Yeah, full roof.
Yeah,
That's roof.
And just one of the third things that I want to add to the thought process tonight. And I don't care if we do anything or not, but I think it's the right thing to do, so I'll throw it out there. So the third issue, I think, and we have $35,000, and I don't know the politics of this, so let me know if this is not good. But there was $35,000 to put in an article, what we call a carryover for senior center feasibility study. I don't see that the town's going to be building a new senior center anytime soon. I talked to the senior center director, elderly services director, whatever you want to define that title as, and that building needs repairs right now. And I would suggest we take that $35,000 out of the potential development of the senior center and put it to fixing the senior center you already have. Now, maybe people object to that, but the senior center director really wants to fix the things at the building, and I think we deal with that now, and if we get closer to potentially building a senior center, we put new money in for a feasibility study. That's my thought. Do with it as you wish, but that's, I just don't see that anytime soon we're gonna have, tons of money to build a senior center.
I think we were as well, and I think part of the issue that we struggled with this board is the way it use for that building, particularly now when you have a population that is extremely vulnerable, people population. Your mic on?
So-
it's not on.
So let me
I just said a bunch of things that were magnificent, and no one heard them.
So let me comment to that, because
Yeah.
I would think I worked that out today too.
Yep.
So right now, the senior center director is doing some activities with seniors, very limited groups of 5 to 7 people spaced apart. She's doing limited for seniors. And there was a lot of question about allowing any recreation activities in that building, because there's seniors in that building. And I had the same concern that I expressed with the director. Given a lot of thought about how to resolve that issue, because the recreation director would like to have some exercise programs in that bigger part of the senior center or community center. And I think the way to resolve that, and I met with them today, both the senior center director, the health director, and the recreation director, and here's my solution. And I haven't told the chief yet, it's part of our meeting tomorrow, but one of the things you can do with CARES money is you can clean buildings and have professionals come in and clean the building. We came to an agreement that basically what we'll do is the seniors will use the building in the morning. Monday through Thursday night, the recreation program will come in. And we will hire a company, which she's getting estimates today for, to come in and clean the building as soon as they leave at like 7 or 7:30 that night. Therefore, it'll have the rest, they'll clean the building that night. It'll have the rest of the night for any, in theory, anything that might be on a table or something that the cleaning guys will. The part-time or the DPW employee maintenance group will still, once again, clean in the morning, so we'll have a double cleaning. The offices, the small offices of the senior center will be closed every night, so nobody can go in those offices. They'll keep it separation of seniors. And the seniors will only use that major hall It should be cleaned, it's effectively twice, but they'll only use that hall for, they do a balance class effectively is what it is. So the senior center director, the recreation director, and the health agent all agree that that makes sense, and that's the resolution to that problem for now. All parties have agreed to that. The only thing we gotta make sure is once we get the cost of the cleaning of the building, we gotta put that in for a CARES reimbursement by Friday. So that's the resolution. So everybody's happy with that. Even the senior director has come to, okay, I can live with the use of building for that. We have some ground rules and some things we developed, but there's no perfect solution because there's always going to be a risk to whoever, but everybody believes that's a good way to deal with it to resolve that issue. So that's where we're at. Now, the issue, this issue is important across the recreation department and the seniors. The COVID numbers are going up. They're mass. They continue to go up. I may stop it all. I may just say we're not doing any of this if the numbers keep increasing, because if the risks start getting higher, we're going to have to stop it no matter what's going on. In fact, you could end up where we close down hall again, depending upon what happens. So that decision will be made as we find out what happens with COVID, and that'll be, a lot of that will come from the health director and me trying to figure out, where it's appropriate. We have to make new decisions if this keeps climbing up again. But at least for now, that's the plan. And again, I say that because nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, so I'm going to reserve the right to close it all, including the few senior programs that are ongoing.
Okay, you've touched on it quite a bit, Ron. I'd like to go back.
Okay.
Where you started.
All right, so the three financial points is, I don't think we need a transfer for the, so the 17.5 is in each of those three accounts. Yeah, we don't need any transfer to the senior center. I'd like you to find $8,000 from, if you want to put 17.5, take $8,000 out of one of those accounts, put it for the bylaws. And then the third component of that, and you think you should take another 10 grand and put it into the town reserve, so if something happens with the pool of money there. However you want to take the money from, frankly, I don't think you have to fund any of those three, Article 1, 2, and 3. I don't think you have to fund any of them.
So if putting that, just a question for clarification, putting that $10,000 in the reserve for the pump would negate the need for this optional Article B, because there would be enough money in the current revolving account to pay the director's salary.
Correct. And if you don't want to put any money, that 52 grand is the total amount you can put in Articles 1, 2, and 3. So you take out 18,000, 8 for the bylaws, 10,000 for the pool. The balance of that you can either put back into Article 1, 2, or 3 anywhere you want, or just leave it in free cash, whatever you want to do. That gives you a little bit of money in free cash to talk to his concern that you want to have something in free cash. Plus, I think there's an additional 8 grand left anyway, so that'll give us a little bit of money in free cash. You can't use free cash until the next annual meeting anyway. So it would be used in whatever the annual town meeting is, May.
Yep.
From May
Supposed to be.
deal with issues from May to July 1st, right?
Yeah.
Can you use free cash in May, after May? When is the last time you can use free cash?
June 30th.
So yeah, so from May to June 30th, that free cash will be available for any of the minor uses we want to do.
Isn't the free cash certified this fall and then it's there?
Yeah.
So you could call a special town meeting to spend free cash.
Yeah, if you want to, but there's a cost involved.
Well, there is, but I'm just saying if we had to, you could.
Yeah, that is the theory, you could if you had to.
All right, comments and on let's start with the article A, the $8,000. Any questions or comments?
Question?
Yep.
Microphone, please.
I think it's on. Is it on?
It is? All right.
How many, or is this going to be brought out to the townspeople before it goes to town council? To see these changes?
So
bylaws?
Bylaws. I think you meant the articles around the agenda.
No, bylaws.
So the bylaws.
My question is specifically, let me go back. They're proposing a bunch of bylaw changes, and I don't know if anybody in the room even knows them besides Peter Crane. So
Yeah.
I'd like to know if we could see them beforehand.
Yeah, what Peter has done as part of this process is he's met with each individual board and committee about their bylaws and has worked through changes with each and every member of every board.
Right.
That is an incorrect statement as far as the finance committee is concerned.
Well, to be fair, we've started. I agree that we haven't finished our negotiations on it. And we'll actually be coming around again. We just got another set of changes. So we'll be ready to meet with you late November.
So that is the intent, and that is the process as is unfolding right now. So I apologize if you're not further along in the process. And then at that point, those changes that all the boards agree on, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, would be sent to town council for review, town council, before being distributed for approval by the public.
Correct. The intent is also after legal review to have public information sessions, if you will. I don't want to call them public hearings because that involves all kinds of other things, but there will be meetings that we hold with the public to discuss the changes. Do I think we're going to have a single meeting that covers the entire body of bylaws? I think that's unreasonable. So we'll probably split it up by chapter, figure it out from there. So there will be meetings with the public, so the public gets to know what'll happen before town meeting. Those meetings will have to happen after legal review.
Yeah, I think the intent is to present something to the public that is appropriate and that has been vetted, so we're not presenting false information.
In the spring, for the annual town meeting.
Well, that's...
Yeah, but I mean, your proposal is to vote on this at annual town meeting, Peter?
It'll be an upcoming town meeting. I haven't committed to annual for this year.
Yeah, it might take a little bit longer, I think.
Well, through the chair, as the newest member of the finance committee, I would love to know. I've had a couple phone calls with people, and people have said that one of them is to disband the finance committee. I don't know if that's true fact or not.
That is absolutely false.
Could we, before November or whenever you'd like to meet with us, could you send our chairman what you propose, if there's anything that you would like to propose to the finance committee, please?
There will be something that we will send to you in November. We haven't finished our review of it yet, and we don't like to meet with committees or dispense information too much. As Mitch says, you don't want to give people the wrong idea. We know that there has been controversy, and we are absolutely willing to meet and discuss and figure out the right balance of changes that meets the needs of the committees.
All right, so let me put it to you a different way then, because you went right around my question. Do you have any intent to change the way that the finance committee operates, runs, or works with the town, or anything like that? I guess that's my question, because I'm hearing that you're going to change things a little bit, and I want to know that before I give you $8,000. How's that? Directly to you, Mr. Crane.
There will be changes because the town has changed in the last 70 plus years. The way the town functions has changed.
Okay.
The way the administration is structured has changed. There will be changes. Can I say, my gosh, we're not going to have the FinCom review budget? That would be beyond stupid.
I guess
so. I don't want to go too far down this path. But
the other question too is, you don't, Peter, you wouldn't have the final authority to make substantial changes to the way the town operates anyhow through this process.
That's correct.
Who would ultimately have that authority?
Town meeting.
Town meeting. So that's really what it comes down to.
That's right.
Yeah. But through the chair again, and why this has got my hackles up, and Mrs. Narwhal was having a head shaking fit over here, is if you're going to propose something and it makes it all the way to the town meeting, and it's got something to directly affect the finance committee, I have a problem with it. So I want to know, before November, or whenever you guys want to do it, what is planned. That's all. So I'm not going to be surprised, or at the town meeting, it's not going to be a lot of fun.
We are not going to consider sending anything to legal review until each of the committees or departments, for that matter, that has input into the specific bylaws has had their say.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the proposed changes that I remember reading and seeing doesn't
drastically change what the finance made. There's things about appointments and some other stuff in there, but that's all we've seen so far.
Okay.
And the finance committee has very strongly said to them that we want to review these item by item before anything is proposed.
Just trying to make sure everybody's on the same page.
We have
FinCom absolutely will have a say in the FinCom bylaw.
A lot of what we're doing isn't codified, and I think that's the problem. And I can just say from experience, Peter came in front of CIPC and we worked through that bylaw. It was a very agreeable process. We were open to discussion back and forth, and I think we came to something that was pretty good and that fully represents what CIPC's function is. So I think it's more just to put down what we're currently doing, how things operate, just so we're not in a position now where we really don't have much.
It's just the fear of the unknown, and what I've heard a couple times is a little scary to me. So I guess we'll run its course, and I'd like to thank Peter for his efforts, and let's see where it goes. But
Yeah, through the chair. It was my understanding at our last meeting when we talked to Peter that before it would go to the attorney, that the select board would have an opportunity to review bylaw changes.
Right, we have done, there's a lot of process we haven't worked through, and the select board, for example, I would imagine is very interested in the select board town administrator bylaws and understanding those before they go to legal review. Your boards have input into the bylaws that impact you, and you should.
Right.
I would think the select board would have much interest and very much an oversight over all the bylaws, never mind just those two. I don't know why.
Right, I think that was our discussion at our meeting.
Formal review with the committee.
Formal review of all of them, absolutely.
Right. That was discussed at our meeting, that we would have an opportunity to review all bylaws prior to going to the attorney, should we want to review them.
I just want to make I don't think we should spend this $8,000 right now. This certainly, this has been being worked on for quite a while now. I'm not disagreeing with that there needs to be changes. I'm not disagreeing that they're old, but again, I'm going back to what I said before. The situation we're in, I think we got to conserve whatever money we can conserve right now until we see the outcome of the situation that everybody's in.
So if I could, so I think if you were to do that, that means that the bylaws couldn't have any legal review until at least the next town meeting, and there was another vote. So you would set that for at least the next 6 months of being able to not do any legal review on it. Is that, I think that would, I guess, Peter, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that would slow down your work pretty dramatically, right?
The legal review is not going to come until everybody else looks at them. And we can't look at this is one of our points we made last year. You can't give us the program or the paperwork today and say you've got to vote on your meeting Thursday night. You've got to have a chance to read it and understand it and ask questions and get answers back.
So the question, Peter, I think to you is that would you be able to complete the process with all the committees prior to the annual town meeting so you would have time to prepare it? Because I would imagine, is your goal to get these bylaws in the annual town meeting, any bylaw changes for annual town meeting?
Well, that had been the goal. I doubt that we can finish the entire body of bylaws in that time. There are still some substantial bylaws, and I'm going to mention animal control and signs as two particularly egregious examples of insanely long general bylaws. But that doesn't mean we couldn't put any of it. And I would also imagine that if the town were to put in this $8,000, that it wouldn't have to be spent within FY 2021. I'd imagine that it could carry over, being an account that would survive. Am I wrong about that?
I think to Tom's point too, if that's the case, then I would personally not support bringing completed bylaws to a special. It would have to go to annual. So if we're not going to make it for this annual, we're already looking at the next meeting, not this upcoming, but the following.
Well,
so we're a year and a half out from that.
There is an intermediate step of doing merely formatting work to the bylaws that we do not do the full review on. And then what will happen, more than likely, is that we'll get more notes from the Attorney General's office about this bylaw is out of date. And earth removal, I know, is a particular one that we got a note on the last time that we modified it.
So, through you, Mr. Chairman, so Peter, I guess I'm even I'm thinking you really need to still a grant. If you're gonna not be able to get all that work done, would you be okay with $4,000 now to get through some of the bylaws you're thinking about doing, and then adding $4,000 at the annual town meeting to do other ones? I mean,
That is certainly a fine way to go also. We look, $8,000 is an approximation based upon how many pages each bylaw is and how much money, how many pages each bill from legal review cost us in a previous fiscal year. So no matter what we do, it's an approximation. So if you want to cut it in half, okay, we will do what we can with the half. And if that holds up something, it holds something up. Not that I'm saying it will. Not trying to come off as
merely a statement. I don't have a problem one way or another if we have the money, the $8,000 to do it, as long as the town administrator, we pay him, he's gonna not just give you the money willy-nilly. So I'm not really afraid that we're not gonna do the right thing. It's a matter of if we have the money to do it. If we some way find $8,000, I think he's gonna use it, and if he doesn't use it, it'll go back into the budget, and the town administrator is gonna guarantee it doesn't get wasted. But the question is, do we have the $8,000? Not whether you guys, if that's what you guys think you need, that's what you need. But
so let me give you the clear amounts, right? So effectively, if you were to pass everything that we talked about tonight, with the exception of these optional articles, you would have $8,828 for free cash. If you didn't do articles 1, 2, and 3, that would add another $52,500. So that's what you have to work with to do. The one potential option is the $8,000, and then potentially $10,000 for reserve for the pool, and then the rest of the money you could do what you want with it. You could put it, you could just leave it in free cash. You can put it in articles 1, 2, and 3. You could do it.
I mean, we've always put money into our stabilization. I mean, that's been one of our goals, is to make sure that money is there. Yeah.
And Karen, just to understand, my understanding is the financial policy is to ultimately get to a minimum of 5%. Is that correct? And I think Dan told me that we're right about 5% right now. So this will get us to 17.5, or will it be over 5, or how close are we in that 5%?
5% would be 1,113,000. We're at 1,003.
So you're right. So then, if you're going to continue doing, I would put the 17.5 in there. If you're going to, that would be where you put it. And then any balance, my second choice would probably be OPEB.
The select board and the finance committee both signed those policies. So that was something that we made as a promise.
Mm-hmm.
All of the both boards made that promise and said, this is what we will do with the money, so that it's going away into a savings account versus just spending it.
And then the capitalization fund. You want to make a motion on that? 8,000, is that for? No, I'm going to go back and start at the beginning on these motions. I just want to go through everything we've just talked about, because, like I said, there was a lot brought up. You also brought up the 35,000. We haven't even, from the study, to go back in and fix the building. And that would have to be a motion also.
Yep. You're right.
That was a motion we just did at the annual town meeting. And so we got everybody behind it, and now we're going to say, yeah, no, we don't need it. I think that's kind of, I realized we didn't really have the money back then. We knew that, but it gives us a starting point.
It's a policy this year, whatever you'd like to do.
I think to that point, though, Karen, I'll let you obviously discuss it. But Ron's been very proactive about talking about formulating a long-term capital asset plan for all of our buildings, which would include this. And I remember we had that joint meeting last year, which was FinCom, Select Board, CIPC. There might have been another board involved as well, and I apologize for leaving everybody out. We had talked about whether it was appropriate to piecemeal something like this and put that money into a study, or whether it was appropriate to wait and see if we can come up with a long-term strategy for all of our facilities that would help us plan better long-term. So I just want to throw that out there because I know that's something that's on our TA's priority list.
As a matter of fact, what I've done in the past for other towns is there's a community compact grant you might be aware of that's done through the Lieutenant Governor's office. I've gotten $30,000 to $35,000 grants for them to hire a company to evaluate every other town building and tell us what their capital needs are over the next 10 years. And then we built that into the capital plan. So we now know not just the equipment we need, but also the building repairs. That way at least we have a plan of some type for what needs to be repaired. So that's what I'd be looking to do here too. I'm going to be asking the Board of Selectmen if they're okay with me applying for.
Didn't we have something like that where everybody walked through the buildings and we saw what we had to do? There was a whole group that walked through all the buildings and did all of that not too long ago. And I'm not saying anything bad. It's just that they all came and said, well, we need this and we need this and we need this. And we went, yeah, the checkbook's empty.
Well, that, again, I don't see that plan anywhere. If you have it, I'd love to have a copy of it. But there needs to be a defined plan in the capital budget for that action. Looking through it and saying this is what we need is not the same as putting into a capital plan for dates and times when you need it. That's what I'm suggesting. A full-fledged capital improvement plan with all those capital needs for repairs of facilities in it. That's what we should have. I can't say what you did. That was really where we need to go.
When we, Mr. Chairman, when last year there were several proposals to look at plans for community center, community hall, etc. We settled on the one for the community center, senior center building that was also going to incorporate or look at other needs as that would impact other facilities in town. So we had other things that were asked for to fund, and we didn't have the money to do it. We settled on that one thing to get this going. Everybody agreed on that to get moving on it. As Karen just said.
I'm all for a facility study if you have money to build a building, but
well,
we're going to have a plan. I don't see where you're going to get the money in the short term to build a building.
Well, in the next 2 or 3 years, we've got quite a bit of debt dropping off from the school projects. That's what that's all based on.
Yeah, but when we're talking about, we already have a structural deficit in our budget of $205,000.
Correct. But we have quite a bit of debt that's going to be paid off in the next several years.
That may help us with our structural budget.
Well, that's going to help us.
Well, I think that's a good point. I hope that's true.
Well, it could. It could, but.
Dan, do you have a number that's coming off next year?
Do I know the number?
Yeah.
No, I'd have to defer to Becky on that.
Okay, Becky, any idea?
I don't have that information with me tonight. I can get it to you tomorrow. I think there's some money coming off in 2023. I think is the year that it's coming off.
It's the school, right?
Again, I want to be really clear here that in terms of this study, I'm not saying that we have to do it. I'm just saying, in my conversation with the senior center director, that money, the thought was that money could be better used for fixing the facility now instead of waiting for something if we're not going to get it. But I don't want to open up a can of worms if this was just approved at the town meeting. And I'm not looking to create an issue here that maybe we don't want to deal with right now. But I put it out there because when I came here when I was hired, I looked at that building and I said, oh, this building looks like it needs real work. But when I went inside the building's better shape than I thought it was. And really the big issue there, I think, is in the short term, if you're going to replace that building, we need an HVAC system from what the senior director is telling us, which I think we should look at green community money to replace the HVAC system in there. This is a suggestion. But I didn't see, at least from my appearance of that building, I didn't see an automatic need for a senior center. It was not in that kind of bad shape. It was something you need next year or a year after. It's not, the building is actually pretty functional, I think.
We just put some money into that too. I mean, we had the walkway repaired with a grant from the Office of Disability. I know that I think we have some money set aside for the kitchen in that facility as well. That was approved.
The kitchen, they can use some COVID money, I think, to try to redo the kitchen to some degree too. And again, I think maybe we can use green money to replace the HVAC. Because I think the energy efficiency of that building is not good for that big room. So,
right.
But I don't see it as desperate need for a new building. Maybe others see it differently. I just didn't see that.
Through the chair, Mitch, isn't the heating system on the list for capital improvements?
I do not believe that CIPC had vetted that. And if they did, it was prior to my being on it. That
I
wasn't-
would double
that was-
check on
At
that.
the
I thought
senior
that-
center?
Yeah.
That they just put in, didn't they move a boiler from one building to another over there?
No.
A little while ago? Last,
Okay,
Since, I mean, I had recently been in the senior center and the money that's put aside for the kitchen is not enough. As far as I know. I mean, it's.
You got some expertise in that?
I do a little bit. But all I'm saying is if we have a study, then a meeting, then a plan, I mean, how long is a building really gonna be for a new building? Where in the meantime, these repairs could get them through to that point. I know we just voted it in, but.
Well, plus the building's still an asset. I mean, even
Correct.
if you're making repairs to it, it's not like we're going to abandon the building. It's going to be used for something, whether it's a senior center long-term or something else, or it becomes a rec building or whatever. It's still worthwhile to invest in infrastructure.
I don't think there's a good answer to this either way. Building that, not set up the way it's a church.
Right,
Convert it
that's
over.
right.
So there's only so much you can do with it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think this money could go towards making them have a better place until we can move forward.
so a potential motion would be to transfer the money from the building feasibility study, same sort of building feasibility to a capital repair, a repair account to repair the existing building, and then allow us to decide what repairs are priority. But that's up to you guys what you want to do. If you want to do something along that line, that would be the motion. That something like that is what they're looking for. If you want to get on.
Was there also money, and Lynn, you might know about this, in a prior town meeting years ago, wasn't there money set aside for the parking lot?
Yes.
Where is that
expansion
money?
of that. I'd
Is it
asked
$15,000?
Joe about that a few meetings ago.
Does anybody know where that money is?
Still there.
It's still there. So none of the work has been done. Maybe if there's no need in the parking lot, we could also allocate that money to the building as well. I mean, and just tidy everything up right now if we wanted to do that.
Do we know how much money that was?
I thought it was 15,000.
That's correct.
Community center parking, 15,000. That's a carryover there.
And that was what, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, that says Article 6, 5, 9, 15.
5 years ago. 5 years ago.
So that money could be, I don't know if you still want it to the parking lot, but for repairs to the building as well.
To that point too, if we allocate money, I would hope that we would use it. It doesn't just sit there for 5 years, but
yeah.
All right. I take it, we're gonna go back and go through these now and make motions on how we want to go through and recommendations to.
So
is that how we're gonna work this, or does the select board do them first and then
Well,
we make recommendations?
So I would like to, I think, hear the recommendations from FinCom, and then if it's okay, if my board, and if it's appropriate, if you vote to recommend, then we could take a vote to place or not, and just get this done in one shot.
So, Mr. Chairman, just maybe for speed, because the issues at hand, I think Articles 4 through the rest, we've already went through, maybe you vote those first, and then at the end, we could figure out Articles 1 and 2 and 3 and those alternate articles and figure that last piece out. But I think it'd be quick to get through all the articles that everybody agrees to, which is 4 through 17 or whatever it is. And then we can come back and resolve those few issues in the first 3 articles and the 2 options.
So is that process out onto you okay with you, Ian?
I'm fine with
And
that.
your board?
Does that make sense?
No, I'm talking about making a recommendation, and then our board will vote to place or not. Ron, is that?
Yeah, that's fine with
Okay.
me.
All right. Is that okay with our board? All right.
Everybody else, okay? Finance, everybody? All right. So on the finance, do we want to start with Articles 1, 2, and 3? Or do we want to go to the 4 and get those and come back to the
I
end?
think they might warrant discussion, so I would, in my capacity, agree with Ron to just push those to the end so we can hammer out what we want that to look like.
Is that okay with the rest of the finance board? Yes, no?
I can't tell with the mask, sorry.
I mean, we all know, all of us here, you know, we're worried about the funding of started at this point.
Okay.
Really the one who brings the most discussion.
Get them done with. Okay. So Article 1, I'll read it and then somebody can make a motion. To see if the town will vote to transfer some money from available funds to the town stabilization fund to take any action there for two. And that amount would be the 5% that we usually do, which would be 17,500. Anyone want to make a motion on that?
I make the motion that the finance committee recommend favorably to transfer the sum of $17,500 from free cash to the town stabilization fund.
Second.
For discussion, can I, Ian, do you mind?
Hold on one second. Go ahead.
If we make any changes, we're going to have to come back and rescind these votes. So we're aware that that's what we're doing. We're taking these motions first, these articles first.
All right.
Hey, Ian, can I just, Ian, is it okay if I jump in real quick?
Go ahead.
Maybe we could vote it as 5% instead of a dollar amount. Free cash is just an estimate. Hopefully it'll be higher, but that I wouldn't say 17.5. 17.5 won't be 5%, because unless it comes in exactly at $350,000.
Okay. Is that fine with Karen and Tom? Change that to a 5% now?
No, I think, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll revise the motion that we say 5%.
Tom, is that okay to change that?
5% of what number?
Of the free cash. The 350,000 that we're looking at is not a certified number.
Right.
So that's why he's saying it should be a 5% of that and not the 17,005, because we're not sure if that is actually 5%.
Correct.
Right. So I would say, why don't we stick with the number that we got, and if something changes when this article's on the town meeting floor, we can change it.
Well, but what the 5% protects you right now.
5% just makes it. That's what we've always said we would do is 5%. So we're just keeping it at 5 of the number. I mean, it could be 349,000. 355,000. If it's 355, then we get a little bit more. That's what you're suggesting.
Are you?
Am I right?
Go to the 5% rather than the number.
Yep.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay. All right, on the floor, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Any further discussion on making it a 5% of the 350,000? All right. All right, Karen.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Darren.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
I'm trying to see who's on. Pete.
Aye.
And Ted.
Aye.
And aye. Motion passes 5%. Recommendation to the finance committee. I mean, to the select board.
Do we have a motion to place this article on the
Motion goes Article 1 at 5%.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Stillings.
Exactly.
Whitman.
Whitman, aye.
Nichols.
Nichols, aye.
Clark.
Nichols, aye.
And Resity, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Hey guys, it's Tamika. I apologize for interrupting, but with so many people, do you guys mind just saying your name if you happen to be voting on the motion?
Will do.
Yep. Thanks, Tamika.
All right. Article 2, to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of money from available funds, including free cash, to the town's capitalization fund, or take any action in their relation thereto. And again, that would be a 5% of the free cash.
I make the motion that the Finance Committee recommend favorably that the town vote to transfer a sum of 5% of certified free cash to the Capital Stabilization Fund.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Second was Tom. Any discussion? Sure.
So I guess if we're gonna deal with the $10,000 for the pool, and we're gonna deal with some amount for the bylaws, be it 4,000 or 8,000, we've got to find some place to take that money from. My recommendation would be, of the three accounts, item 1, 2, and 3, this would be, if you're gonna make the reduction, this is the account where I think that reduction should be made. And it's up to you guys as a policy, but if you, instead of making a motion at 5%, I think we've got to deal with that issue of the 10 in the bylaw money. Maybe you don't want to put anything in this account this year, and allow that money to be used for those other expenditures. But once you vote the 5%, there won't be any money to deal with the pool or to deal with the thing. So we've got to think of this someplace.
Is the pool, wouldn't that be capital?
What we're suggesting is we don't have any capital money for the pool right now.
No, but what I'm saying is, wouldn't that be a capital that could come out of this capital stabilization account?
That's what I'm saying. Either way, it would come out of here, right?
So that's the thing. So put it in, and then they can come to the town and ask for it to come out of stabilization.
Does that, if you vote the money into the stabilization account, does that have to go to the town meeting again to get the money out?
Yep.
Then you don't want to do that, because you'd have to wait
until
the pool could break before you have an annual town meeting. So that's why I don't think that's a good idea.
Pool's not open before the annual town meeting typically.
Well, again,
but who knows how long it would take to get the pump
reserve
replaced?
the money going to reserve will roll back into free cash anyway. But again, that's the issue that the recreation people were concerned about, having that money in for the pool. The timing of when that goes bad is the matter. If it went bad early, though, we'd have to fix it before the season opened. I don't know. I guess that pump is in really bad shape. Again, I'm just putting that out there for consideration.
Well, I mean,
She's
we
right,
also,
it could later.
wait a minute, wait.
Depends upon when the pool breaks. It could
Just to
work out.
clear too, I mean, the pump hasn't gone through capital improvement either. So that hasn't been vetted. So, I mean, I know that this is kind of an emergency thing that came up, but we haven't looked at any quotes or know the actual scope of the work that needs to be done either. And I think that either way, we would have to vet that before making that capital. Unless, again, it's an emergency, we can hold a special.
That's what the reserve is for, those kind of emergencies, where you really wouldn't have to go through the capital improvement for emergency. But again, that's something that's
Through the chair, whoever, Mitch, if they have a problem with that pump between now and next year, we're never gonna know till next year when they go to open it. They're not gonna use it now. The pool is closed till next spring. We don't need to do this. Do what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. We don't need to change that pool pump. And we're not gonna do it in February. You know what I'm saying? That's just me.
When it breaks, we can deal with it. It's tight if you're gonna open the pool in June and you have to replace it in May. I just don't know what that window is gonna look like.
Maybe you can open it if the pump breaks. I'm not saying you want to do that, but maybe you can't then.
A lot of people rely on it.
Well, it comes down to the other issue too, whether we should be spending this money on the pool, which is supposed to be self-sustaining. This is the second large capital expense we put into the pool over the last few years, and it's not accessible to the general public. It's fee-based. So
This is Leah. If I may, Mitch, I have a couple questions. Well, just perspective, I guess.
go ahead.
So first of all, we have the capital the fund, the capital stabilization fund. But to me, there were projects that were presented to us tonight that could potentially be capital projects. For example, the fire alarm system at the library. And we're not considering taking any of that funding out of this. So I guess one of my questions is, where do we decide when we're going to go to the capital stabilization fund versus not? And then second of all, I think to say that we're not funding, that we would be putting the money into the pool, the other option is that we pay the recreation director's salary out of free cash or our budget, and then that frees up money in the revolving fund for which a lot of the money from the pool comes into. So then that becomes self-sustaining there. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that we are funding the pool because it's not sustainable when it would be if the recreation director was funded from the town as a whole. So
Yeah, I mean, that's an entirely separate issue, but I mean, again, we put a lot of money from the general taxpayers into the pool. And I think it's, again, we need to have that conversation moving forward about how that department is structured to allow for those revenues to be used better by the town and to make that position perhaps fully encompassed by the town budget. I mean, I'm not sure, I think Ron's going to probably work on looking at some of that moving forward and figuring out some of these issues, but.
Right. So, and I think that, I mean, to me, the town pool is a town asset, whether it's accessible to the whole town or not. It's, if it deteriorates beyond use, then it becomes a big liability to the town. So then the whole town's on the hook for it. So I see it as an investment in a town asset. But part of my comment was that the other option is to put the free cash for the director's salary, the entire amount of the director's salary out of free cash, and then that frees up the revolving fund to do these repairs. So it's a matter, I mean, it's a separate issue. It's also directly related to this issue, because if the director's salary is paid out of the revolving fund, then there's not the money left over, or there potentially may not be money left over.
I think we're saying all the same thing, because the money is the money, and we're just talking about where it comes from and how to move it. We're not, the root of the issue isn't necessarily any of those things. It's, again, I think the expenditure related to the pool and what we want to do with stabilization. So, I mean, whether you move the money into the director position salary, you're still paying for the pool pump and that salary, right? You're shifting the line items. That's all you're doing is moving the ledger. It doesn't change any of the amounts or anything like related to that.
Right, and I guess my perspective is probably different than yours on this, is that the recreation director's fund should be a town-funded position, and then that would free up the revolving fund.
Right, but we can't address that right now. That's not the discussion we're having. We're having a discussion on these line items.
Right, and I understand that, but one of the optional that is not a favorable option is to fund the entire salary for the recreation director out of free cash. And so I understand that that was kind of nixed, and we don't need to fund that entire amount, and that this would be a way to make sure that it's sustainable, at least for this year, as the whole recreation situation is reevaluated.
But my understanding is that money is there, and if that pump doesn't go, the money's there to pay for it, to pay her salary. Right, out of that fund,
out of the revolving fund.
Revolving fund, it's there.
Except that the intention of that money that's in there wasn't to pay her whole salary. That part of that assumption was they were going to fix the pool out of it. That's what their concept was.
Correct.
Now, I don't care how we do this. We got to do it something. We could gamble effectively that nothing happens to the pool by spring, and okay. I'm just bringing it forward because that was a concern of the recreation director. I mean, I think, yeah.
I don't think
Yeah. All right, I have any further discussion on Article 2? Really, that's what we got to get back to. All right, so I have the motion for a 5% on Article 2 for the money to go into the capital stabilization fund. One last time, any further discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Karen?
Karen, aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Darren?
Darren, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Pete?
Valley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
And aye. Motion passes. All right, Article 3.
Do we want to,
I'm sorry.
yes. Do I have a motion to place Article 2 on the warrant?
make the motion to place Article 2 on the warrant.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Stillings? I'm sorry, Jeff, I couldn't hear what you said.
Aye.
Whitman?
Whitman, aye.
Nichols?
Nichols, aye.
Clark? For city, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 3, to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of money available from available funds, including free cash, to the town's OPEB trust fund or take any action there relation thereto. And that amount again would be a 5% of the free cash.
I make the motion that the finance committee recommend the town vote favorably to put 5% of free cash to the OPEB trust fund.
Second. We have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Any discussion on Article 3? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Karen?
Karen, aye.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Ross, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Pete? Peter?
I'm sorry, I got on mute. O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
And aye. Motion passes.
Okay, do it. Do I have a motion to place Article 3 on the warrant?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll have a roll call vote. Stillings?
Stillings, aye.
Whitman?
Whitman, aye.
Nichols?
Nichols, aye.
Clark?
Clark, aye.
For city, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
All right, Article 4. To see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of money from available funds, including free cash, to the funding sources approved for the FY 2021 operating budget approved under Article 11 of the June 27th, 2020 annual town meeting, as may be necessary to take any action in relation thereto. And that amount is $205,000 from free cash. Do I have a motion?
Yep, I make the motion that the finance committee recommend favorably that the town transfer $205,000 from free cash to fund the operating budget.
Second. Discussion. Hearing none. Take a vote. Karen?
Karen, aye.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Ross, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes.
Sorry.
Do I have a motion to place Article 4 on the warrant as recommended by the Finance Committee?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll have a roll call vote. Stillings?
Stillings, aye.
Whitman?
Whitman, aye.
Nichols?
Nichols, aye.
Clark? And Resity, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 5. To see if the town will vote to amend the action taken in the Article 12 of the annual town meeting dated June 27, 2020, to the amended sums of the operation of water and sewer enterprise funds for fiscal year 2021 as follows. Salaries, original vote $261,994. The amended amount $294,794, difference of $32,800. Expenses, original vote was $1,230,398,000. The amended vote would be $1,467,198, a difference of $236,800. Debt principal, original vote $190,525. Amended vote $155,000, a change of a negative $35,525. Debt interest, original vote was $35,525. The amended vote would be $44,093, a difference of $8,568. Capital outlay, the original vote was $595,000. The amended vote would be zero. The money would be returned, which is a change of a negative $595,000. Indirect charges, original vote was $188,209.84. The amended vote is 176,760,04. Difference of $11,490, $449.80 back to the accounts. Let's see. Further said, the amount sums appropriation of $2,137,854.04 be raised from the available department receipts, investment earnings, and other revenues for the combined water sewer enterprise funds, or take any action in relation thereto.
I make the motion that the finance committee vote, recommend favorably on this article.
Second. Any discussion?
Joe, could we get that line by line detail though, so that when we have questions? Oh, okay. If we can get that, then that way it'll help us.
Any other discussion? Earlier. All right, hearing none, we'll take a vote. Karen?
Karen, I.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Darren, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
I have a motion to place Article 5 as written and recommended by Finance Committee on the warrant. I'm not going through all that.
So moved.
Good job.
Second.
Good job.
All right, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Stillings?
Aye.
Whitman?
Whitman, aye.
Nichols?
Nichols, aye.
Clark? And Resity, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 6. To see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds, including town's water, sewer, enterprise, retained earnings, free cash, the sum of $50,000 for the establishment of a town water, sewer, enterprise reserve, or take any actions in relation thereto.
I make the motion that the finance committee recommend favorably that the town take from the town water sewer enterprise retained earnings a sum of $50,000 to establish a town water sewer enterprise reserve.
Second. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Karen?
Karen, I.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Darren, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian is an aye. Motion passes.
Do I have a motion to place Article 6 on the warrant as approved or as recommended by the Finance Committee?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Stillings?
Aye.
Whitman?
Whitman, aye.
Nichols?
Nichols, aye.
Clark? And Resity, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 7. To see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds, including free cash, the sum of $800 to account number 001-141-5200-000, assessors purchase services, to update the town's Access GIS or take any action in relation thereto.
I make the motion that the finance committee recommend favorably to transfer the sum of $800 from free cash to account number 001-141-5200-000, assessors purchase services to update the town's Access GIS.
Second. I have a motion on the floor and a second on Article 7. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. Karen?
Karen, I.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Darren, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
Do I have a motion to place Article 7 as recommended by Finance Committee on the warrant?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Stillings?
Stillings, aye.
Whitman?
Whitman, aye.
Nichols?
Nichols, aye.
Clark, aye. And Resity, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 8. To see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds, including free cash, a sum of $25,606.55 to account number 001-129-5110-000, town administrator's salary, or take any action in relation thereto.
I make the motion that the finance committee recommend favorably to transfer the sum of $25,606.55 from free cash to account number 001-129-5110-5110000, town administrator salary.
Second.
Aaron seconds.
Had to. He's in this voice. What are you gonna do? Get away.
A motion and second. Any discussion?
Yes. Is Dan still on? I don't have my glasses.
Yep, still here.
Hey, Dan, could we get an accounting of what was actually spent? Because this will be a question that will come up on the floor. So if we could get an accounting of what was spent and.
In who was spent on?
Yes, that way we can have answers when they come up.
Yep, certainly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call. Karen?
Karen, I.
Tom? Karen?
Darren, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian is an aye. Motion passes.
I have a motion to place Article 8 as recommended by Finance Committee on the warrant. All right. I have
Second.
First and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll have a roll call vote. Stillings,
Stillings, aye.
Whitman,
Waitman, I.
Nichols,
Nichols, aye.
Clark, aye. And Resity, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 9, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $24,000 from the PEG Access and Cable Fund to PEG Access and Cable-related operations for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020, and authorize the Cable Access Committee to expand such appropriation and to revert all unspent funds at the close of such fiscal year back to the PEG Access and Cable-related fund, or take any action in relation thereto.
I make the motion that the Finance Committee recommend favorably to transfer the sum of $24,000 from the PEG Access and Cable Fund to PEG Access and Cable related operations.
Second. I have a motion and a second on Article 9. Any discussion? Hearing none, take a vote. Karen?
Karen, I.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Darren, aye.
Dave? Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
I have a motion to place Article 9 on the warrant as recommended by Finance Committee.
Motion in place. Article 9 on the warrant. Second.
The motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Stillings,
Nichols, aye.
Whitman,
Waitman, I.
Nichols,
Nichols, aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Resity, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 10. To see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds, including free cash, the sum of $11,838 to fund the town's portion of the retirement benefit due to a Wachusett Regional School District employee in accordance with the Section 18 of the amended Wachusett Regional School District Agreement, or take any action in relation thereto.
I make the motion that the Finance Committee recommend favorably to transfer $11,838 from free cash to fund the town's portion of the retirement benefit due to the Wachusett Regional School District employee.
Second. I have a motion and a second on the floor on Article 10. Do we have any discussion?
It's the last one.
All right, hearing none. Gonna have a roll call vote. Karen?
Karen, I.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
It's not the last one.
I hope so.
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
I have a motion to place Article 10 as recommended by Finance Committee on the
So moved. Second.
The motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Have a roll call vote. Stillings,
Stillings, aye.
Whitman,
Whitman, I.
Nichols,
Nichols, aye.
Clark, aye. And Resity, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 11, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds, including free cash, the sum of $14,360.
The finance amendment, 360.
That's what I said. That's what I said. That's 360. It said 350, I said 360.
Okay, I thought it was.
No,
Yes.
So the sum is the same.
Right. Okay.
Just gonna make project fund 930, and then make the total 14,360.
so 360, 14,360. All right, that's what I had started. Okay, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds, including free cash, the sum of $14,360 to fund the purchase of a replacement fire alarm system at the library, including all incidental and related expenses, or take any action in relation thereto. The funding source, free cash, $5,430. Naquag Green Project Fund 360 is $8,930 for a total of the $14,360.
I make the motion that the finance committee recommends favorably to transfer from free cash the sum of $5,430 and from the Naquag Green Project Fund, $8,930 for a total of $14,360 to replace the fire alarm system at the library.
Second.
Any discussion?
By
Hearing
chance,
none.
are there any library funds available that could help defer this even more? I'm just saying.
If you want me to jump in, there's some gift money that's probably unrestricted for the library.
I like it. How much?
$24,475.
If I may, the library needs a lot of repair, and it is being utilized by the town boards, commissions, and for public use frequently. So that's all I have to add.
Any other comments, questions?
Also, isn't there currently still a roof issue repair we're dealing with?
So I'll be honest here, I don't have any clue what they're using the gift money for. Usually that's a lot of times that money's used for books and things.
Right.
But I don't know what their plan is, so I wouldn't feel comfortable making any judgment to take any of that money because I don't know what their plan is.
Right.
So I mean, we really just looked at it in terms of free cash and using the green project. But I can't advise as to what that donation money is being used. I would guess they have a plan. That's usually they do, but.
Any other questions, comments? All right, hearing none, take a vote. Karen?
Karen, I.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Darren, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
I have a motion to place Article 11 on the warrant for recommendation of the Finance Committee.
So moved.
With express changes.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to say, I mean, based on the nature that it's a fire alarm system, it's a no-brainer to me. It's just one comment on it.
Yeah. Okay. Have a roll call vote. Stillings?
Stillings, aye.
Whitman?
Whitman, I.
Nichols?
Nichols, aye.
Clark, aye. City, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 12, see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds, including free cash, the sum of $50,000 for purchase of a used 5-ton dump with plow and associated winter equipment, including all incidental and related expenses, or take any action thereto. Funding source, free cash 40,000, road maintenance fund 231 for 10,000, a total of 50,000.
I make the motion that the Finance Committee recommend favorably that the town transfer the sum of $10,000 from the Road Maintenance Fund, 231, and the sum of $40,000 from free cash to purchase a used 5-ton dump with plow and associated winter equipment, including all incidental and related expenses.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on Article 12.
Ian, I'm sorry, I missed who seconded on that one. It didn't sound like Tom.
Dave.
It was Dave.
You guys are keeping me on my toes tonight.
I want it in the minutes that we feel that Tom fell asleep.
Mr. Chairman. One of the questions come up before too, is there any money in the capital expense stabilization fund, capital expense fund to fund this? Again, I'm going back to what I said earlier, and I've said right along, I think we got to watch our pennies right now for the next several months or whenever we get more further along in this pandemic, what's going on. I mean, I'm not denying the fact, or I'm saying that we don't need this, and he's right in asking for it and all that, and we should do it, but
You're just asking for other funding. If there's any other funding out there.
The answer, no, the answer is $169,170. I'm sorry, $169,170 is in that capital stabilization fund. So if you chose to, you could take money out of that fund and use some portion of it towards this if you wanted to. That's what the board would like to do. The boards would like to do.
Questions, comments?
Mitch, how do you feel about that? You're on that.
Well, I'm on the capital improvement committee. I mean, the committee voted favorably on this item. We took a tour of the facility. I'm not sure we can make it through another winter with some of the equipment we have. And in reality, if you have to sub some of the work out, it's going to cost just as much money as it will.
I guess my question is, let me direct it differently. Should we take it out of that other fund that Tom just mentioned instead of free cash?
No, I think the TA has expressed that I think we're in a good position with free cash, or in at least a tenable position going into Springtown meeting, even with these expenditures. But I understand Tommy's point too about having more on hand. I don't know what's going to come up between now and then.
So, to you, Mr. Chairman, to be clear, so at the end of this process, assuming that we do nothing on the bylaws committee, we'll only have $8,000 left.
Right.
So we won't have a lot of free cash going into the annual town meeting. The suggestion is not a bad one, but I'm not sure how much it makes a difference. If you could, instead of using free cash, let's assume you wanted to add another $20,000 of free cash. You could, in theory, vote instead to take $20,000 out of the capital stabilization fund, which is what the member's suggesting. It depends upon what you want to have for, free cash. If you want to have a little bit more, I don't know what's going to come up. I mean, if it was a major disaster, you'd do stabilization. But if it's small stuff, free cash would be handy to have a little bit. So I don't think it's a bad idea. Obviously, you guys are trained to build up that capital stabilization account. So
we just voted to put money into it, and now we're voting to take money out of it. I think, as part of your policies, you want to put 5% in. The conversation we had going into this is, if we were not going to contribute to one of these, it would be stabilization, because now if we're taking money back out, we just voted to put it in. We're going to take it back out to buy the truck. I mean, it really just depends on how you want to treat stabilization. And again, I certainly want to defer to FinCom to have this discussion as to what you want to do with it. But we also don't want to put the town in a bad position moving forward either.
this is the kind of policy. I don't think it means a lot of it, so I don't think it's critical. But I don't think the member suggestion is all that bad.
Right.
To take a little bit now. If we had a lot of free cash, it'd be different. But because we're so limited on free cash, keeping 20 more grand in free cash may not be such a bad idea. Taking it out of that.
So, look, I mean,
8,000. When he says little thing, 8,000 is a very little.
What you could do is, if you rescinded the motion, or to recommend the article to put the 5% in stabilization and applied that to the truck purchase, I think that kills two birds with one stone and addresses Tommy's concern.
Exactly the same thing I was talking about with regard to the pool. It's, but I think that's fine. I mean, I think at this point, you've already voted that. I would rescind it. I would just make this motion change and say that $20,000 or some amount comes out of the stabilization.
Okay.
It's the same thing. It's just a matter of how you.
But it's not the same thing. That's the thing. We're saying now that we're sticking with our rules, what we all signed off on, and now we're putting it to the town to say, we'd like to take this out of stabilization for this reason. And they have the choice to say no, and then we can do whatever we have to on the floor.
And that's a valid way to do it. I think you're right. That way, at least your recommendation, your policy is only recommendation, not required. But you can make the case that you're following our recommendations that we put in place. So it's a good concept.
I think we should, through the chair, I think we should amend it to do the whole 40 grand out of it. And we'll keep a little extra. Free cash.
So $48,000, remove $40,000 in funding from the capital stabilization account and just leave the 40 grand for cash.
Sorry to interrupt. This is, if I may.
Leah, go ahead.
I have a question. Does taking money out of capital stabilization in fact impact our bond rating or anything? I know if we take it out of town stabilization, the state, because of COVID, the state had given us that grace period to kind of pay it back, but I know it can have a negative impact on our borrowing rates, bond rating, all of that. So I just want to make sure that removal from a stabilization account isn't going to negatively impact our financial situation.
So I'd be happy to answer that through the chair, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would say the impact is zero. First of all, 40 grand is a small account, and the purpose of your capitalization account is designed specifically for this reason, for capital items. So the answer to your bonding question is no, we have zero impact. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, that would be, if we were taking it from regular stabilization, it would have more of an effect than capital. If I might, Mitch, can we, because free cash isn't certified, perhaps, we could leave this kind of open-ended and, amend it on the floor. And I think maybe that's what Karen was saying. We can deal with this, if free cash comes in at a higher number, perhaps we'd want to use free cash for this particular purchase.
I think that's a great point. I think the other option that I'd like to throw out there too is if we are concerned about the availability of free cash on hand, and we don't want to do anything with stabilization, I guess my only question is, if we procure this truck, we're looking at December, which means January, and can we make it through another season without this capital purchase? I mean, the roads are going to be utilized far less this year than they have in prior years.
At least from what I understand, Chairman, that's really not the discussion. The discussion is going to buy it, just how we're going to pay for it. I haven't heard anybody say not to buy it. So I think the question is only of how we're going to pay for it.
Okay.
If I could just, Mr. Chairman, comment at the end. And just to be clear, if you go the other way, free cash could be less than we thought. Are you comfortable that free cash is going to be more and not less? Because if it's less, then you may want to do it now. Are you more comfortable that it's higher to come in more than the 350 than it is less than the 350?
Well, through the chair, the DOR, when they certify free cash, can be somewhat unpredictable in what's deducted from your unreserved, undesignated fund balance. That's why I'm always very cautious until the number is actually certified. I would say, 20 years I've been here, I've probably always underestimated the amount of free cash that's, at this point in the process. So I'm hoping it'll be a little bit higher. I just think we should, maintain some flexibility, just in case.
So through the chair, can't we just say free cash or capitalization? I think we've just to place it. I don't think we have to specify right now, do we?
I'd like to amend my motion so that it says $40,000 from the capital stabilization account and $10,000 from the road maintenance fund, 231.
I'll second that.
I'll need the person that seconded to change you did. You did. I have you down.
It's the only one I did. Great. You're out of order.
Okay. So any discussion on Karen's change? Nope. Do I need to vote on your change or just, we can move forward to the article changing it that way?
No,
correct?
You can move forward, Ian, with
All
the
right.
vote.
So Article 12, will then be to see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds, including free cash, the sum of $50,000 for the purchase of a used 5-ton dump with plow associated winter equipment, including all incidental and related expenses, taking the action in relation thereto. And the funding sources, instead of free cash, is now going to be stabilization, capital stabilization. It's getting long. For 40,000 in road maintenance, fund 231 for 10,000. All right, any other discussion on that? All right, hearing none, vote on that. Karen?
Karen, I.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Darren, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ed?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
So I have a motion to place Article 12 on the warrant as recommended by Finance Committee, including applicable changes.
So moved.
Second.
It's Whiteman. I have a question, sorry. So we're gonna not even consider free cash for this, it would be straight from capital stabilization, is that, I thought Dan's kind of hope was, that maybe we would leave it as either or, just to see how the numbers came in. I just wanted clarification on the select board side.
That is what was recommended by Finance Committee, yes.
And it come out of capitalization.
It would come out of capital stabilization and with $10,000 out of the road maintenance fund.
So too, just a comment. So if the free cash number is higher, the money, the added money is going to stay in free cash anyway. So I think it comes out the same way, right?
It could still be amended on the floor, right? We could still change it.
We're going to have to, because free cash may come in certified different, but that, it just, if we don't spend it, it just goes in free cash anyway, the higher numbers.
This is just giving us some money, some flexibility.
Right.
That's all that's doing.
And plus, if later on, we have free cash 6 months or 8 years from whatever, we can add more money into capital stabilization next time.
Well, and
we don't have to, we can add more.
Yeah, to that point, if it comes in higher,
Right.
that 5% we're already contributing to capitalization is going
We
to
can
be
make
higher
it
number
10%.
two. So you're kind of
Whatever.
you're already kind of putting money back into that fund.
Right.
So.
Take the vote.
All right, a roll call vote. Leah, first, does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
All right. Stillings,
Aye.
Whiteman,
Whiteman, aye.
Nichols,
Nichols, aye.
Clark.
Clark, aye.
For City, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
All right, Article 13. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a tax agreement for the payment in lieu of taxes pilot pursuant to MGL Chapter 59, Section 38H, subsection B, and Chapter 164, Section 1, or any other enabling authority, and upon terms and conditions as the board shall deem in the best interest of the town or personal property associated with the solar photovoltaic facility having a proposed nameplate capacity of approximately 367.2 kilowatts built upon the roof of Glenwood Elementary School at 65 Glenwood Road in Rutland, and take all actions necessary to implement such an agreement or take any other action relative thereto.
Ian, do you want to take 13 and 14 together because the language is exactly the same minus the addresses?
Can we do that, or do I have to? I think I have to have them separate just because of. I prefer. I know. I appreciate it. Do I have a motion on 13?
I make a motion that the Finance Committee recommend favorably in Article 13.
Second.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. Just to let the board know that I will reach out, get information as to the roof and to the timing of the pilot that we talked about, and have that sent out to both boards.
Thank you.
For both 13 and 14.
All right. Any other discussion? Tom?
Just, and any other information they give us on where are they at in the process and why, we know they're on the roof, why aren't they turned on?
Yes, the status of the solar panels.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, take a vote. Karen?
Karen, I.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren? Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
I have a motion to place Article 13 on the warrant as recommended by Finance Committee.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Have a roll call vote. Stillings.
Stillings, aye.
Whiteman.
Whiteman, aye.
Nichols.
Nichols, aye.
Clark. City, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 14. We'll see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a tax agreement for payments in lieu of taxes pilot pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 38H, subsection B, and Chapter 164, Section 1, or any other enabling authority, and upon terms and conditions as the board shall deem the best interest of the town for the personal property associated with the solar photovoltaic facility having a proposed nameplate capacity of approximately 189 kilowatts built upon the roof of Central Tree Middle School at 281 Main Street in Rutland, and take any and all actions necessary to implement such an agreement or take any other action relative thereto.
I make the motion that the Finance Committee recommend favorably on Article 14.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the floor on Article 14. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Karen?
Karen, aye.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Darren, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion carries.
I have a motion to place Article 14 as read and recommended by Finance Committee on the warrant.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second.
Whiteman has a comment. Sorry. Just Ron, to add in to make sure that everything's up to date with the district also. I know you were the school district for both of those.
Well, yeah, I want to find out, there's a variety of things I need to discover in this whole solar arrangement. I'd like to frankly see what the schools are getting out of this deal. I'd like to know about the roofs, and I want to check on the patterns. So I'm going to I'll try to get an update kind of all around on this issue and send it to you guys.
Thank you.
A roll call vote. Stillings.
Stillings, aye.
Whiteman.
Whiteman, aye.
Nichols.
Nichols, aye.
Clark. Clark, aye. City, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 15. To see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law C-32, 4-2B, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we recommend favorably on this article as just read.
Second.
Any discussion on the Article 15?
We're getting tired.
Hearing none. Take a vote. Karen?
Karen, aye.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Ross, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
I have a motion to place Article 15 as recommended and read by the Finance Committee on the warrant.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Have a roll call vote. Stillings.
Stillings, aye.
Whiteman.
Whiteman, aye.
Nichols.
Nichols, aye.
Clark.
Aye.
City, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
All right, Article 16, to see if the town will vote to petition the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to adopt special legislation authorizing and directing the Worcester Regional Retirement System to retire Detective John D. Sanji pursuant to Mass General Law C-32, 100 and 100A, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Meyer, I make a motion that we recommend favorably on placing this article and voting on this article.
Second. All right, we have a motion on the floor. And a second on Article 16. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Karen?
Karen, aye.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Ross, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
I have a motion to place Article 16 as read and recommended by Finance Committee on the warrant. So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Stillings.
Stillings, aye.
Whiteman.
Whiteman, aye.
Nichols,
Nichols, aye.
Clark,
Clark, aye.
for City, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Article 17, to see if the town will vote to amend the votes taken under Articles 25 and 26 of the May 2019 annual town meeting.
Did we do 16?
17.
Or we just did 16?
Yep.
Okay. So Article 17, and this was the 2019 meeting? Okay. See if the town will vote to amend the votes taken under Articles 25 and 26 of the May 2019 annual town meeting to clarify the intent thereof to create the Agricultural Preservation Fund rather than the Open Space Preservation Stabilization Fund, and to appropriate the $500 to said fund so that such votes will provide as follows. Article 25, moves that the town create an Article Preservation Fund under the provisions of General Law C40 S8L subsection H to be expended by the Agricultural Commission for the purpose set forth therein. Article 26, move that the town appropriate the sum of $500 from the Open Space Preservation Fund to said Agricultural Preservation Fund.
I make the motion that the Finance Committee recommend favorably in Article 17.
Second.
Any discussion on Article 17 with
Yes.
Tom?
The question is, I don't remember when we passed this back at that meeting. Under this first part, it says to be expended by the Agricultural Commission. They would be the ones, but wasn't there something there and approved by the Board of Selectmen? Doesn't this have to be approved by the board before it can be finalized? I thought there was something in there.
Yeah, so I don't think there needs to be any additional approval. Once it's put on the warrant by the Board of Selectmen, it's in effect approval.
Oh, no,
In the budget, then the Agriculture Commission, just like any department, would have the authority to spend it. I don't think there needs to be another separate vote for the Board of Selectmen to spend it after this.
But that's not what that says, right? Unless there's something in Chapter 40, the general laws, it says to be expended by the Agricultural Commission. So that the way that reads, they can, if there's something in that account, they can just spend it.
They could.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think there should be another step there because maybe they want to buy something that the town doesn't want to take on the expense of, or the maintenance of, or the whatever.
There's no defined budget, so in theory, it's $500. They could spend it anyway.
Well, no, I'm not saying with the $500.
This is just to open.
Yeah, that's why.
That's just to open it. They want to,
Anybody could donate.
I mean, they would have to vote, right?
Unless it says in Chapter 40 that they have to come before the town meeting, it says here, expended by the agriculture, they could spend, if that account got to be $3 million, they could just spend it.
I guess we have to find out what the.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right?
You could put subject to approval of the town administrator or subject to approval of somebody.
Maybe it already says that. That's what I'm getting at. I'm not opposed to this. I'm just saying, I think there should be another check on that, but it may be already in there is what I'm getting at.
Truthfully, I don't know.
No, I understand.
It's not going to hurt you to put subject to approval by the Board of Selectmen or town administrator. I'm fine with it. I don't see why that would be an issue.
Well, you don't, huh?
He's only been here 2 weeks.
Right, he's only been here 2 weeks. I conceptually have a problem with separate boards having their own accounts. I mean, we have an issue with that right now with RDIC.
I would just say this.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. 8L specifically says with the approval, just a moment, with the approval of the mayor or city manager in a city or the Board of Selectmen in a town and et cetera.
Okay, so it does say, okay.
That's
8L says that.
It answers the question.
Well, just for the record, towns, a lot of commissions have budgets within the town budgets that they're spent by the commission about, but that's not usual.
Right. Okay, any other discussion on 17? All right, hearing none. Taking a vote. Karen?
Karen, aye.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Darren?
Darren, aye.
Dave?
Dave, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passes.
I have a motion to place Article 17 as read and recommended by Finance Committee on the town warrant.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Stillings,
Stillings, aye.
Whitman,
Waitman, aye.
Nichols,
Nichols, aye.
Clark, aye. For City, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, just a question or comment. After article, the question is, you clearly have funds in free cash now to deal with after articles. The board has a willingness to give any money to the bylaw committee or not. But there is now an additional $40,000 in free cash, so the ability is there to do whatever you choose to do.
It's up to you if you want to address that tonight. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about the pumps already, talked around that. It really just,
we need to do anything with the pump.
it really just depends on what we want to do with the legal allocation for bylaw subcommittee.
Tom?
I'd like to recommend that we just leave those as they are and address them when they come up, or if we need to. The other one can wait till the next round of the town meeting. I think we need to leave that money in free cash.
But you're only talking 8,000 for the bylaw. Boy, I don't see why you don't get this thing moving forward.
It is moving forward.
It isn't, not if they can't get it.
Typically, we use $150,000 of free cash in our budget process. That's been the process since we put in the financial policy. And we've had to cut budgets every year. We have a structural deficit this year already. I think Tom's right. We need to have that free cash for any shortfalls that we have in the current budget and or to help offset any negative impacts on town services in this current budget period.
So just to clarify, the process we outlined with the bylaw subcommittee could take a little bit longer. It's not going to make it to annual this year, realistically. So there's a little bit of time there.
I think I heard, again, Peter can speak for himself, but I think he heard that he agrees that we're not going to do all the bylaws.
Right.
I mean, we can do some, and we can live with $4,000 to at least get some of those bylaws moving. You're not going to get any bylaws approved without legal review, period. So what you're basically saying is nothing's definitely going to happen until we fund money in the next annual town meeting. So to me, it makes sense to do something to get the process moving. That's again the financial decision.
Mr. Chairman, that's not what was said. It was said earlier that they've got to go to all these different committees and boards to review this. That's not going to happen in 2 or 3 weeks. That's going to take several months to do before it goes to legal review. There's no sense in having to go to the legal if it's going to come back and the board or commission is going to say, well, we don't like this and this and this.
So just to be clear, and I'll let Peter speak, but Peter said that some things he might be able to do with some boards and then bring it to legal approval and get some things approved. It doesn't have to be all done at once, but I'll let Peter speak to that, but that's what he's saying.
But then that still has to wait for the meeting when this all gets put together to be done.
Well, no, I guess if you did 3 bylaws, for instance, wherever they are, you could fund them to legal review and then get those 3 bylaws on the annual town meeting. Vote for those 3 items. Again, he has to decide what his priorities are, what bylaws he wants to pass. But yes, you could, if you have legal money now, you could get something on the annual town meeting warrant if you have some items. But if you give him no money, he can get no items on the annual town meeting. So again, is that what you're saying, Peter? I think that's, so that's the question. Do you want to allow the bylaw committee to do anything to finish any part of this process for the annual town meeting? That's what's going to hurt inside.
You don't want to see all these articles on one town meeting.
Could I, through the chair?
Karen.
Mr. Crane, I know you guys have worked real hard on this. What is your intent? Are you going to do this as a whole process, or are you going to try to split it up and let us bite this off in little bite-sized pieces? How are you going to do this?
That is up to the select board to decide. Having said that, if we look at the discussion for legal review, especially talking about money, the intent is always to send a complete chapter at a time. We've already been through legal review, which is general position, but we're ready to do the executive and administrative chapter, and from then we're almost ready to do
to the financial chapter. So again, if we want anything on May, we need money, some money now to get that through this process. If not, then everything goes on. We'll be back in May asking for more money. And then it'll be up, and then again, it's up to this group's pleasure as to whether or not we get money next year.
Through the chair again. I'm just a little bit confused, and maybe you can clarify it. Do you have anything that's been through review that we can go to the annual town meeting this year without money? That's my question.
Without getting any money, he's saying.
Yes, but if we did that, we have conflict with the bylaws.
It would have to be legally reviewed first to make sure there's no issues.
We've had.
You've had legal review already, though, right?
That's review, legal review.
Right.
That's all. That's general provisions. If we were to go to town meeting with that, we would have conflicts with other bylaws in the body right now.
Okay.
So sending that one through, I mean, putting that up to ATM at the annual town meeting is not a good use of our.
If he doesn't use it, it goes back to free cash. I don't see, I mean, it's not like it's.
It's appropriated in an article, it sits there till it's either used or returned to free cash, so it doesn't automatically go back to free cash.
We know it's gonna be used.
It could be, but if we need it in the meantime for something else. We're saying all the same things over, we said 3 or 4 times tonight already.
I think we've got to start with.
Somebody
I'm
else
gonna make a motion.
Sounded like somebody was trying to, but I couldn't tell who.
Vote on favor.
Is it possible to make, could I make a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion for the sum of $4,000 to keep the ball rolling in the general direction that we need to get these bylaws changed. I think that $4,000 is not going to break us in any way. I understand Tom's point of view about we need every penny, but I don't think $4,000 is going to be a deal breaker. So $4,000 on this article, please.
I second that.
All right, so Article 18.
Peter, is that enough to kind of move you along in the
I'm
meantime?
sure of that.
Okay.
We now have an Article 18 motion and second in front of us to provide $4,000 from free cash for the purpose of legal review by town council of modifications to the body of town's general bylaws in preparation for presentation and approval at a future town meeting, and further, any funds remaining after review is complete shall be deposited into the town's general fund. Okay, that's the wording. Is that all right with you?
I like that wording, sir.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion on that motion? Hearing none, take a vote. Karen?
Karen, nay.
Tom?
Tom, nay.
Karen?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Ted?
Purcell, nay.
Ian, aye. So 4-3. Motion passes.
All right, do I have a motion to place Article 18 as read and recommended by Finance Committee on the warrant?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion from our board?
I'd just like to note that, the town administrator strongly recommended this. So I think with his guidance that it's something that we should really consider supporting.
And it's the townspeople's final say anyways. We'll just press it.
Right. All right, have a roll call vote. Stillings?
Stillings, aye.
Whiteman?
Whiteman, aye.
Nichols?
Nichols, aye.
Clark aye. For City, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
All right.
Is there anything else we want to address?
I think there's one more thing that you probably need to address is that, the two, articles, the 15,000 from the, driveway and the 35,000
For the study.
That's gonna have to be a recommendation, I believe, from you first, before we even discuss it. I think it's, it's at that level that it should go through first.
Okay. Does our board want to have a discussion tonight, or would we like to schedule another meeting to make that recommendation to Finance Committee?
I would prefer a different meeting to then have a conversation. To me, I think I'd like to know what the work that needs to be done there is, as well as make sure that it's Council on Aging and Recreation have kind of worked together, that if it's going to maintain a probably double use space, that it's amenable to both groups.
Okay. And
I'd also just, through the chair, just like to confirm whether or not capital improvements had made a recommendation regarding the heating. So that was my understanding, so we can get clarification on that as well.
Okay, we can take a look at that.
The heating system.
Oh, the heating system. Exactly. So just for clarity, so I understand the process here. The timing, again, I haven't done commenting in a couple of years. I just want to make sure I'm clear on how this goes. So if the Board of Selectmen would have to meet quickly, make a recommendation, the Finance Committee would have to have another recommendation, and then we would add it to the warrant. Is that the thought process?
That would be the thought process.
Okay. And it's not something you couldn't add an article on the floor, right? It has to be done by the two boards at this time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would like to see it done prior, but it's my understanding that we have until the 14th to place or remove items on the warrant.
To the 14th.
The meeting date.
Good. Okay.
To place? No.
Yeah.
The place has to be posted 2 weeks before the meeting.
Well, that's why the post.
And so everything's got to be on the warrant 2 weeks before the meeting. That's why.
Let me put the question. The posting has to be done by the 29th.
Right. You can't add to the
It
warrant.
has to be done and posted that amendment. There'd be no time to deal with it later. If it actually puts that 29th. That's what I was trying to get at.
But also, the warrant's closed though, hasn't it? I mean, it was open, it closed on Friday, I think, so.
Well, it was closed to anybody adding additional stuff. This was kind of part of that discussion. You can change the warrant tonight, so it's up to you. Tonight, I just don't think there's any time for tonight.
So can you put a placeholder on it for this item on the warrant?
I guess you could word something. I mean, I guess the question is,
That's been done before.
what's the general
So you put a
concept?
placeholder on that we just don't.
And we
Don't
could,
move on.
truthfully, we could revisit this at the annual town meeting. I'm
Well,
not sure it has to be
any
done
capital
now,
improvements would still have to go through CIPC anyway, so there wouldn't be enough time on that facility.
Right. So maybe the thing to do here is to allow me to do an evaluation of this and then prepare something for annual town meeting to make that change. Maybe we just use the time to effectively find out what we need to do that, because I don't know there's a real plan for what repairs have to be done. I don't think there is.
Tom?
Plus, how will we have discussions within the next several days with all the placeholders that were talked about this when we voted for it? I mean, we've got,
What placeholders?
Doesn't have any
This is already on.
no, I didn't say placeholder, no, stakeholders, I didn't say placeholder. When we discussed this and made this recommendation 2 years ago, last year, whatever it was, I mean, there were a number of people that had input into this, from the town hall people, the community center people, the senior house, I mean, the senior center people. I mean, there's a number of people that had input on this, so this is a big change from what they asked for.
And maybe that's a good reason to hold it to later.
Well, I'm just saying, we should be able
I
to,
don't argue, I'm just, the reason this came up.
no, I'm not arguing, I'm just saying, there's other people that should have a chance to say something about it.
Should just through the chair as well. I just want to make a note. There is a committee, like a senior center committee, so that probably should be a discussion with them as well. Just make sure everybody's on the same page, that they agree that's a good route to
This
take.
was a result of a simple conversation between me and the senior center director. So I'm fine with waiting. I just wanted to bring it up because we do want to repair that building as soon as possible, doing repairs. But I think you're right. There's no real good plan for repairs. So I think we need to develop that. So
Like I said,
time will give us to bring in stakeholders on all of this.
I do think that there was a review on the capital improvement on that. I'd certainly like to know on that part of it, so.
All right, do we have any other business to come before the finance committee?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I can just make one comment.
For Article B.
Jeff, go ahead.
Is Article B been addressed?
I'm sorry?
The Article B,
Proposed Article B?
optional. Optional article.
I think that wasn't recommended by finance committee.
And I think the issue is if there's something that happens with Bull, we'll deal with it if it happens. We'll figure it out.
Correct.
So just to make my last comment, Mr. Chairman, just because Karen pointed it out to me, just for clarification, so that everybody has a clear understanding. When this was drafted, we put a number of these motions are sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. Any one of those that deals with the general operating fund will be changed to the Board of Finance instead. You good? Okay.
I have a tough time hearing. Through the chair, this is Jeff. What is the status of your proposed Article B? Funding of the rec director.
There's enough funding in the revolving account to pay her salary until the next until annual. So that item isn't necessary. The question was whether or not to move around some of the funding to pay for the pool pump. And I think FinCom had recommended that if something were to happen, we would deal with it when it comes up, and there's still some time to deal with it. The pump also hasn't gone through the capital expenditure process, so no one's really seen anything on that pump yet.
Okay, thank you.
Ian, we have the minutes.
Oh, minutes from the last meeting, June 30th?
June 30th, I forget now, hold on.
July 30th.
July 30th, thank you. I think I'll have a motion, I'll entertain a motion to close our board.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second for you, roll call vote, Stillings,
Stillings, aye.
Whiteman,
Waitman, aye.
Nichols.
Nichols, aye.
Clock, aye.
So just for the Board of Selectmen, I need at least 3 signatures for this tonight, because we have the majority sign. So
got
before you
one
leave,
on
please,
there.
everybody sign it.
Recity, aye. Motion carries unanimous.
All right, thank you, everybody.
I need a motion to accept the.
I make the motion to approve the July 30th minutes as printed.
You already signed it.
To the second? We got them in there.
Good night, everybody. Thank
Emails.
you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All right. Motion is made and second to accept the minutes. Do we roll call? Karen?
Karen, aye.
Tom?
Tom, aye.
Karen was, Dave was not.
Aye.
And Peter?
Yeah, we saw your list move, but you're on mute.
Peter, speak up. He's
Oh,
muted.
I'm sorry. The mute button disappears on me. O'Malley, aye.
Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Ian, aye. Motion passed.
Karen, you can do this one.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, sure. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Adjourning at 9 o'clock sharp.
Aye.
Aye.
In favor?
Aye.
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 Karen, aye.
Aye.
Dave, aye.
Darren, aye.
Darren? Aye. Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
Ian? Thank you, everybody.